Hey everybody, welcome back. Today we're gonna hop right back on the astrology theme, and today's specific subject or archetype is Cancer. We're going to conclude the water signs. Pisces is already up, as well as Scorpio. Now, before we hop into the specifics and the specific nature of Cancer, I want to give a quick preface on how I perceive astrology, right? So first and foremost, I want to say I perceive astrology, the planets, to be one of nature's finest representations or expressions of itself. I wholeheartedly believe that the planets reflect nature just as much as trees do, as much as grass and apples and earthquakes do. I believe the planets are an equal reflection or expression of nature being itself, and that is very special because there's always intelligence and a message nature is communicating to us simply through its existence. And so because the planets have been here before we were, before our awareness was, before we were born, before our consciousness was incarnate into Earth, and because the planets will remain, no matter how long we decide to stay here or leave, they're blueprints. Absolutely, they're foundations, they're blueprints. And so, if they're here before us and here after us, it's important that we humble our ego and ask, why? What are you here for? How are you meant to positively benefit me? Okay, so yes, I do want to preface by saying I do believe astrology reflects nature just as much as trees, apples, tornadoes do. I also believe all astrology archetypes, all the planets, all the houses, all the asteroids, everything, carry duality, infinite duality within them. And so there's possibility for positive expression, for neutral expression, and for negative expression within each planet, each archetype, each personality, each idea or personality in astrology. For example, Cancer can behave in a positive way or in a negative way or in a neutral way. Every archetype can behave in infinite ways with our three options: negative, positive, and neutral. It's imperative to understand this while we equally understand that we create based off our internal mental state, so we can wake up and realize, okay, I'm going to use the pros of Cancer to my benefit, and then become aware, acknowledge the negatives of Cancer, so I can make sure I don't repeat those mistakes. Because each archetype is going to tell us a story, it's going to allow us to see a personality growing and how that personality evolves. And so what we're studying here is the evolutionary process of each astrology archetype. So throughout aging and time and maturity, each astrology archetype will learn lessons specifically based off of their narrowed subjects, narrowed niche, right? And so we're meant to learn from these astrology archetypes and how they evolve, so that we can take the best from them, apply it to ourselves, and leave the worst behind and not repeat those same mistakes. Alright, that being said, I also believe that every birth chart, every specific birth chart, when it's accurate and the birth time is accurate, their location is accurate, will align us with the truest version of ourselves in this present incarnation. Please excuse my laptop, it's like firing up. It's so excited. But so our each individual unique specific birth chart will align us to the personality version which feels the most true to us. And how can I prove this? Of course, through my own experience is the only thing I can speak on. But before I became aware of birth charts or stumbled across this intelligence information, I lacked a lot of clarity and a lot of direction regarding my personality and who I was. It was very blurry. I had no secure sense of self, right? When I discovered my birth chart and I began to understand it and learn how to decode it and read it, I began to realize what the birth chart was telling me about who I was felt right. It's like this whole time I was waiting for someone to tell me who I was. And when I read my birth chart, I was like, yes, like that's right. That feels good. But for some reason, I was so trapped in my mental state that I was limited in my awareness to be able to apply these own definitions to myself. It wasn't until I read my birth chart and said, yes, that's right. I do relate to what this birth chart is telling me that I am. So my birth chart says I have my moon in Aries, and it's conjunct or next to Jupiter. So my moon, my heart space, my emotions are very intense, and they're very expanded, and so I feel them to a deeper degree. It's just I feel just objectively stronger than the average person. I feel bigger, I feel greater. It's like my heart is magnified times 100 simply because it's conjunct Jupiter. And this helped me realize why I'm so incredibly sensitive or emotional with my heart, with my emotions, in comparison and contrast to everybody around me. And it's more like I started to fit in for the first time in my life with something and someone. And who was that someone? Ultimately me, because I was reading my own birth chart. And it's almost like I was able to secure a sense of self without having to gaslight myself or fake it and be like, oh yeah, that's me. No, I would read my birth chart and I'd be like, wait, yes, like that's actually me. Like this, it felt so freeing. It felt good. Rather than feeling like someone's trying to label me, I felt like, no, like this is not a label. This is who I am. You know? All right, so again, I have the next thing I have here about my astrology beliefs is that every sign applies to everyone. You know, we all carry a birth chart which carries all 12 signs, all 12 archetypes, all 12 houses. And so every single sign is going to be relevant to us one way or another, whether it be to a minute degree or a major degree. But every sign applies to us. So it's really not beneficial or smart at all to say, oh, I hate this sign and I love this sign. Because we carry all signs within our own personality. Remember, as the creator, as the operant God and operant creator in our reality, we hold infinity within us. When we incarnated into this solar system and decided to align ourselves with the planets and the energies the planets give to us, that blueprint. I forgot what I was saying. Oh my god, it's okay. So I'm just gonna restart. Every sign applies to everyone, and so in our birth chart we all have the 12 signs, and so it's not really smart to say I don't like this sign and I do like this sign, because ultimately we house them all within us, all 12 archetypes. So it's important that we understand each 12 archetypes and each of their evolutionary processes, so that way we can use the lessons they teach us, apply it to ourselves, because it's all going to be relevant, because we house all of the 12 astrological archetypes within our birth chart. Okay? So every sign is important and relevant to you, not just your sun sign, not just your sun and your moon sign, but all the signs. So it's important to open your heart and mind and soul to all of them, to learn, understand deeply all of them, because they're all going to be relevant to you. And they're all going to be useful and guide you in some aspect of your life, because as infinite as we are within us, when we decided to incarnate into this solar system, the way that nature organized itself was through the planets and the energies they carry. So for example, Cancer, ruled by the moon, deals with emotions, matters of the heart, right? Versus Mars, deals with anger, with drive, with motivation. So we have water and fire, right? Mars would be Aries. And so basically what I'm trying to get at is that each planet or each sign has their own specific niche. And so imagine if I'm only focusing on Cancer, the moon, the heart, the emotions, but not on Mars, the drive, the motivation, the passion. I need to have everything combined into one to feel whole. So I can't ignore one sign or ignore an archetype, astrologer archetype, because I'm like, oh, Gemini can be so annoying. Well, we have Gemini within us. And so it's not going to be helpful to push Gemini away. What's going to be helpful is to understand Gemini, break it down, learn what Gemini has to teach us, to communicate to us by studying its evolutionary process, and then, becoming wiser and more whole and more intelligent. Yeah, so every sign applies to everybody. Every sign is valid and relevant to everybody. Every astrological archetype and each of their evolutionary processes is relevant to everybody. And I also want to give hold on. And before we jump into the actual information of Cancer, which I do apologize, it's the longest intro ever, you're getting like 12 minutes. I want to give a quick, I say quick, but I know I'm going to go on a tangent, explanation on what I believe or how astrology has changed for me pre and post enlightenment. And so, again, as I said earlier, each sign, each house, each idea in astrology carries both the possibility of positive expression or negative expression or neutral expression. And so now that I'm enlightened, I understand that any negative expression is not meant to stay. It's meant to be alchemized back to positive. So for example, during the process, the evolutionary process of Cancer comes to learn, I need to let go of negative, or I need to let go of beliefs which are negative that I keep holding on to simply because they're familiar, because I've been repeating them for the past 7 years. And so what is the archetype of Cancer teaching us through its evolutionary process? It's teaching us you don't necessarily need to keep beliefs in your internal mental state just because you've been repeating them for 7 years, for 10 years, especially if they're negative. You can wake up one day, become enlightened, and realize, I don't need to be repeating these negative beliefs because I create. I align to my creation, to my reality based off my internal mental state, my internal beliefs, what I believe to be true. So if I keep perpetuating these negative beliefs, I'm only going to align to their realities, to their manifestations, to their validity. So then the Cancer archetype grows and expands and becomes wiser and says, now I will shift all my negative beliefs into positive ones and repeat those and sustain those for the course of years and years and years. And those will become my new familiar, my new home, my new day-to-day, what I wake up with, what I go to bed with. Right? So now let's get right into the astrological archetype of Cancer, specifically its evolutionary process. Now I do want to give a quick shout out to the books I'm going to be using I'm going to be using Ari Moshi's book, The Evolutionary Process of Astrological Archetypes, of course, and his book, which is, I love Ari. His book is a beautiful, the most beautiful book ever on specifically that, the evolutionary process of each astrological archetype. He could not have published a better book for me for this series, and to him, I give half of the credit. And the other book I'm going to be using is a more mainstream common book that I got at Barnes & Noble, I'm sure, which is more describing the mainstream relevance of astrology, which is titled The Only Astrology Book You'll Ever Need by Joanna, Martine, WoolFolk. So I have Ari Moshi's book, which is a more in-depth, intermediate, not as easy to find. It's, you really have to be into the subject of astrology to even encounter it, especially understand it, integrate it, And this other book, which I have here by Joanna WoolFolk, is more of a mainstream read, which you'll find in mainstream media. You'll find talks about it talks about more than just the sun sign, so it does definitely go into depth. It's an amazing book, but it is more mainstream. So I wanted to give both perspectives so we can tie depth with more fun. We can do both into one. Okay, wow, tangent forever. Told ya, 15 minutes. We're already almost at 20. Okay, let's get started. All right, so we're going to start with Ari Moshi's book, The Evolutionary Processes of Each Astrological Archetype. The Cancer archetype is the 4th house, ruling the moon, as mentioned earlier. It is a cardinal sign, which speaks or translates to initiative, a water sign, clearly ruled, driven, motivated by emotion, the inner feeling, the inner world, the inner feeling. It is an intuitive sign that will rely on how it feels according to the intelligence it gathers, right? According to how it feels. If it feels safe to act, then it will take proper initiative and act. If it does not feel safe to act, it will maneuver itself until it finds a way to feel safe and then act. However, it is a cardinal sign, and so the archetype of Cancer does like action, does like movement, does like taking the initiative, feels right, feels aligned doing so, and has no problem doing it so long as they feel like they're in a safe environment or safe internal headspace, mental space to do so. So when I think of Cancer, I immediately, like a light blue, obviously water, but it differs from Scorpio, where Scorpio is the depths of the water, where it's so dark you can't see how light and blue and transparent the water is. It's so dark down there. And Pisces speaks more of the unknown. But Cancer, I think of the ocean. It represents what's on the surface, what you can see, what's noticeable, what's transparent about emotion, the truth and reality of emotion. It's on the surface, and you'll come to notice this because if you know any Cancer archetypes, when they disagree with something, they'll snap like a crab would. It'll almost like in the brink of an instant, they'll shift and they'll snap, and you're like, whoa. And it can be almost a stingful snap because it's not something we quite expect when we know the Cancer archetype to be sweet and kind, but then something disrupts its flow and it snaps, because that's how transparent is. Whereas, for example, Scorpio, if Scorpio disagrees with you, it'll just think about it and go home at night and brood about it and think about it and never show it, never tell, and be a poker face. And Pisces will say, well, maybe they're right. Maybe I just need to look into their perspective and see, maybe we're just different. But Cancer, no. Cancer's like, no. That's not right. That's not the way, according to what they believe, right? Cancer, the archetype of Cancer is transparent in that way, in the way that water is transparent, in the way that water is always moving. There's always a flow. Water is never still, and neither is Cancer. Cancer is always flowing with emotion throughout the course of time. And so, Cancer can be feeling sad in the morning, and then they'll be feeling happy in the afternoon, and then feel mad and happy. And the emotions are just always what's at the surface. It's what's leading, what's taking the initiative in how they respond to life, how they show up to life, how they react to life, is how they feel. And if they feel how they typically feel, how they normally feel, how they feel familiar in feeling, then things are okay. The minute things feel out of the normal is when things are not okay, and the Cancer can snap and shift faces into something that seems almost unrecognizable. But it's not that it's unrecognizable. In truth, it's the real and honest duality within all of us. And I think the ocean, which for me represents Cancer, is a beautiful way to show that duality, because the ocean is so infinitely beautiful, but it can be infinitely dangerous as well. Really. And so Cancer reflects that same aspect, where Cancer is transparent and free and flowing and open and loving, and it surrounds you and it wraps around you and it molds to suit you according to whatever you want. It'll keep you hydrated, and it'll make you feel alive, and it'll refresh you or renew you. But if you don't follow the rules of water, if you don't follow their demands, it'll drown you and suffocate you, and you won't be able to breathe. You won't be able to you'll just literally be overtaken and overcome by the influence, by the potency that the Cancer archetype brings. So for example, if the Cancer archetype, let's say you pissed the Cancer archetype off because you did something that they didn't like. They won't just be like, oh, you pissed me off. No, what they'll do is they'll make it everybody's problem now. You pissed me off, now everybody's gonna know that you pissed me off, and everybody's gonna feel that. Not just you and me, but everybody. So when I walk into the room, I'm gonna kill the vibe immediately. The vibe is gonna be dead, and I'm gonna make sure it's dead, because I'm gonna walk in and I'm gonna be all grumpy and broody and sad, and I'm gonna show it, and I'm gonna walk in with a bitch face, and I'm gonna walk in with my shoulders slugging, and I'm gonna walk in sad and mad, and everybody's gonna see it and know it, and they're all gonna ask me, and I'm gonna tell them. That's how the Cancer archetype drowns you, by overtaking you, by literally just killing the vibe so harshly and taking the initiative to make you feel it. That can be the shadow side of Cancer. And what it is, it's emotional manipulation. And that's how Cancer kind of gets its lick back, by emotionally manipulating you into doing what it wants. And if you don't, then the Cancer archetype is very good at taking initiative and going to talk about you and what you did to it. And it never forgets. The Cancer's ruled by the moon, so it represents memory and what we store within us. Like the crab, Cancer archetype, it keeps things out of familiarity. The past has meaning simply because it no longer is, because it's the past. Cancer it can be nostalgic or melancholic in that way, where everything just always has meaning. And that can be great, because it can be amazing meaning, and they're great lovers, great friends, But meaning can also come with dark shades, with blue shades, with sadness and nostalgia. But so yes, I think of Cancer like the ocean. It's transparent, it's on the surface. You can always see and feel how a Cancer is feeling. Like they're not gonna hide it. They don't do really good. The Cancer archetype does not do a proper job at hiding how it feels. It's always expressing itself because it's a cardinal sign in one way or another. Whether their face looks sad, or they're humming sad music, or they just look sad, or they keep talking about sad things, or they keep bringing up sad. Remember, the Cancer archetype is always going to express itself. Now, let's say the Cancer archetype is happy. Again, you're always going to see it because the Cancer archetype will wake up, oh, singing, oh my God, I'm so in love and happy, the world is great. The Cancer archetype will take initiative in helping you. I want to help you. I'm so happy. I want to be of service. The Cancer archetype will want to protect you and cook for you and play with your hair and make you feel loved and make your emotions feel good and make you feel soft and comfortable and like you're at home and you're in a safe space. It'll take that initiative but what's happening is it's simply reflecting what's going on internally. So that's why, excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm moving in my chair. The Cancer archetype has such a strong duality in the way it expresses itself, because you can just be the best, amazing safe space and home if the Cancer archetype feels that way internally. If the Cancer archetype is aligned, then it will express itself in that manner, and it'll just be like an amazing home. It's like that friend, that mom friend, even if they're men, like that dad friend that is just so safe and reliable and like a home for you. Like that's so special. It really is. There's just so much authentic love in that kind of energy, right? And so that Cancer is a very special sign in that way, where it's just raw and honest, and it shows you the real, true duality in emotion, and how emotion can just be the best thing ever or the worst. How expression, because of emotion and how we feel in our emotional internal state, that the expression that comes out of our internal emotional state can be amazing. It can also equally just be just as detrimental. There's such a duality. And Cancer is the proof of this. Cancer is the transparent and obvious proof of this. Pisces and Scorpio, again, not necessarily, because Scorpio hides it. And Pisces will mold itself into seeing through your perspective. But Cancer is so stuck in its familiar ways and what it knows to be true and safe and comfortable for itself, that when something goes outside of its bounds, it'll show you the direct and honest and transparent duality of emotion, and what emotion can bring out of you. Emotion can bring out the best things out of a person, equally the worst. You know? It's important to understand, if you're around a person who has a lot of Cancer placements, or simply Cancer archetype, to understand this about them, so we don't necessarily, judge them so much for it. It's always important to hold someone accountable. Absolutely, there's never a reason to act irrationally, even if you're angry or annoyed. But just to understand that the Cancer archetype flows in emotion. And that's where everything is stemming from. And so if a Cancer archetype is constantly crabby and moody and brooding, it's because that's what their constant internal emotional state is. So that's all they know, therefore can or are aware of expressing. This is why enlightenment is imperative, so that every Cancer archetype, every Cancer can understand that when I'm feeling bad, it's just a message for me to go back to feeling good. I don't necessarily have to feel bad for the rest of my life, because Cancer is like that. Cancer will stay somewhere because it feels safe, not in the way that it's necessarily safe, but more like it's familiar. So in a very dark way, the Cancer archetype may stay in a abusive relationship simply because the abuser is so familiar. It's he or she, they have been so constant that the Cancer just decides to stay. The Cancer archetype just says, I'm going to stay here. This is home. This is familiar. Even if it fucking blows and sucks. Now, that is sad, right? And so after we learn about enlightenment, we are free and we say, oh, I don't necessarily need to be stuck in this abusive relationship just because it's familiar. I can reach real safety by making new choices, and then those new choices will become my new familiar, my new home. So instead of staying in this abusive relationship because I'm so familiar with its repetition, with its consistency around my life, I'm going to make a new choice. I'm going to take initiative to pursue real safety, a real safety within my internal emotional state. And I'm going to make that my new familiarity, my new safe space, my new home. Throughout the course of time, I'm going to repeat this, and then it'll just become my new home. So yes, let's hop into Erimoshis, which I feel I already said that. So Erimoshi says here, home is absolutely a necessary experience for any soul. And he's right, absolutely. We are always going to want to come back somewhere, where we sleep at night. We're always going to come back somewhere. Even people who are homeless have a spot, like repetition will lead us to create a home anywhere. When we become enlightened, we understand that the goal is to make our inner world our new permanent home. But the only way to make that our permanent home is by repeating the fact that that is now our new permanent home, right? But we're always looking for a home. And what is home? Home is familiarity. Home is repetition. What you know, what you trust, what you see the most, where you feel comfortable, where you lay back your layers, where you peel back your layers, where you're yourself, where you're honest, where the most honest, the most transparent, the most you, right? Here, Erimoshi says that the home that each soul creates for itself is an energetic expression of how it feels nurtured and safe while it's here on Earth. And so when we have the outlet to be able to create our own home, we're going to create a home in a way that feels safe for us, of course, right? That's why people have sometimes obsessive decor, because seeing that decoration allows them to feel safe to some degree, to some way. People may have a lot of mirrors because being able to see their own reflection makes them feel safer in some way. There's always going to be a reason behind the small details. The only people who know these small and intimate reasons are really ourselves, right? For example, yes, we will each create our home according to how we feel is safe. Now, safety, sometimes I have to make sure I do clarify this. Safety, when I say safety, automatically you think positive, but there is circumstances sometimes where people will think they're safe, but they're not. But what makes them feel that they're safe is that they're too afraid of the unknown, and so what they know just automatically feels more safe. Because the unknown is they're too afraid of it. They're too much in fear for the unknown. So no matter what it is that they're in, no matter what circumstance they're in, whether it be the worst or the best, that's what's safe for them. Just what they know. So again, safety, when we're talking about it in the Cancer archetype, is not necessarily going to translate to something positive. Safety here is translating to the familiarity, to what we know, right? Because I understand that there's a lot of homes that are not really accurate in depicting how someone feels safe or nurtured. Because here, safe is trying to tell you just what's known. So for example, let's say your mother was raised in an abusive household. And so when she raised you, she also raised you in an abusive household. And so throughout generations and generations, they're perpetuating this abusive household because that's what's safe for them. Not necessarily safe like it's positive, but safe in the way that that's the only thing they know. And because that's the only thing they know, that's the only thing that generations are going to perpetuate. When I speak of Cancer archetype, it's more of repetition, familiarity, what you know, what you're used to, what you're comfortable with. And that necessarily doesn't always have to be a good thing. Sadly, unfortunately. That is why I do encourage the topic of enlightenment to be equally taught while I teach about the astrological archetypes and their evolutionary processes, because when you're enlightened, then you come to understand, well, I don't want to be trapped feeling unsafe in a known environment. Now that I know enlightenment, I can free myself literally. Like, I can literally free myself starting from within and eventually manifest externally. And so you never have to stay somewhere where you're technically unsafe just because you're so familiar and used to it, and that's how you know. You know, basically, you no longer have to be afraid of the unknown, so you can actually take the initiative to experience a better life. Because Cancer archetype has that drive within them naturally. It has that initiative to go out and pursue expansion, to pursue something better, something greater. You know, to pursue a greater sense of security, a greater sense of home, a greater sense of real safety, a greater sense of feeling good, a greater sense of positive emotion, a greater sense of an internal emotional state. And so enlightenment is equally as imperative as the knowledge that the astrological archetypes are teaching us throughout their evolutionary processes. What enlightenment does is it opens our awareness to possibility. Really. That's simply all it is. To positivity of positive expansion, positive growth, positive feeling. And really, that really is all the Cancer archetype could ask for. The safety of being able to expand positively. Like, really, it's really simple. And alright, so continuing. So here Arimoshi says that the evolutionary intention of Cancer is for the soul to get to know itself through the wisdom, information, and lessons of the emotional body. Absolutely. The Cancer archetype is meant to acknowledge and become aware of its internal emotional responses in according to the outside world and its own internal emotional responses to itself. And then through that awareness, the Cancer gets to know itself. Correct. Here, Arimoshi continues to say that on a deeper level, Cancer symbolizes the very fact that evolution occurs through the emotional filter of the human identity. And this is so beautiful. It gives such meaning to Cancer, because what he's saying here is when we acknowledge we feel bad, like, again, our heart just feels bad. Ruled by the moon, Cancer, the archetype of Cancer, the moon, the heart, the emotions. Our emotions feel bad. Our emotional states feel bad. It is through that which we evolve. It is through that uncomfort, through that awareness of what is, that leads us to scratch our brain and say, how can I be more to overcome and conquer this? How can I become greater, a greater version of myself? To overcome this negative feeling and to replace it with a positive one filled with satisfaction and fulfillment. You know, we'll be growing up and we'll realize, I want to be more. I'm smart, but I want to be smarter. I sing good, but I want to sing great. I'm a good basketball player, but I want to be a great basketball player. And it's through that uncomfort, where that awareness that we wish to be more, we wish to evolve into greatness, will make us feel bad. Because we're equally acknowledging that we're not great yet. We're good. And so we're not where we want to be. And then we feel bad about it. And the point here, the intelligent point here, is to not dwell and stay stuck in the self-pity, in the victim mode, in the self-hate. Oh, I'm so shitty. I can't do shit. I'm never going to improve. I'm always going to suck. I'm always going to fail. That's not the point. Please don't work in an inverted manner. The point here is to say, I have this desire to be greater. That's amazing. Because I have this desire, this drive, this motivation to want to be greater, I'm going to use the negative feeling to my benefit. How am I going to use it to my benefit? I'm going to say, look, I never want to feel that way again. So every day I'm going to work hard to become someone that actually satisfies my own inner self. For example, this is like a funny example. Let's say you go to the dentist and then they're like, oh, you have 3 cavities because you haven't been taking good care of your teeth. And so you get a shot. Now you're like, I never want to get a shot again in my mouth. Are you joking? So now you brush your teeth and you take 3 minutes or 2 minutes and you do the whole thing. You take your time. You make sure you are thorough and you do it slowly and you become wiser. You become better, greater at brushing your teeth because you never want to feel the ugly feeling that shot gave you. You know? And so that's literally it. So we will feel bad, recognize that it is because of our own self that we feel bad, want to become greater because of that. And then if we're smart and wise and intelligent, we will become greater. We'll become inspired rather than unmotivated. We'll become motivated, you know? Because it can go 2 ways. It can be, oh man, I got a shot in my mouth and now I have all these cavities. Oh, I'm such a loser. Oh my goodness, I'm going to have terrible teeth forever. I'm always gonna have to be getting shots, aren't I? Oh my goodness, what if I have weak teeth forever? What if I'm just forever gonna be like the person who has cavities? Or you can be like, oh my god, I got a cavity. How am I gonna not repeat this mistake again? Okay, I'm gonna be more thorough when I brush my teeth. I'm gonna be more responsible. I'm gonna grow up. I'm gonna be great. I'm gonna be a better version of myself. And now I'm not gonna get another shot. You know, there's 2 different avenues you can go. The intelligent, positive way or the negative way, which is detrimental and never really going to benefit you in the long term. Right. And so it is through our emotional awareness that we expand and we grow. Even when I was learning to become a great singer, when I was in the beginning stages, I would suck. I would hear myself when I would record myself and I would sound bad. And I would feel embarrassed and shame, and I would feel bad. I would feel emotionally bad inside. But then I would really quickly alchemize it into, okay, stop feeling shame, Carla. Listen to it. What do you need to fix? Like, take away the emotion for a split second. Use your logical brain. What do you need to fix? Refine it, fix it, be better, do it, and next. And then let's say I would fail again. It would make me feel bad. But that's not a problem. Because all that's telling me is, hey, there's something wrong. We need to be greater. We need to learn more, work a little harder, practice a little more. That's all it's telling me. And so it wouldn't trigger me to feel like I'm not good enough. It wouldn't trigger me to fail when I was singing. It wouldn't trigger me anymore because I would be like, no. Every time I fail, it's an opportunity for me to master my skill a little bit more, refine my skill, and then perfect it slowly. Now I've been singing for a couple of years now, and I'm a great singer. But I only got here because every time I would fail and I would feel bad because I just became aware that I failed, I would use that bad feeling to my advantage to say, no, this bad feeling was going to grow out of it. More hate, more resentment, more shame, or what? No, I'm going to become stronger, smarter, wiser, more intelligent, and become better at my skill. You know? Alright, continuing, Erimoshi says, or he explains how when we're born from the womb, we have attachments to our mother as we're being raised, if we're breastfed. He continues to say that as time passes, we eventually cease to need so much attachment. We no longer need to be held all the time, or no longer need to be breastfed, or fed in general. We eventually learn to feed ourselves, and we start developing an ego according to our circumstances and our surroundings, right? And so we start to identify what is familiar, and we start to build a self-image or an ego, a perception of ourselves according to whatever our surroundings are, right? So we'll say, this is my family, this is my bed, this is my home, this is my religion, these are my friends, these are my opinions, these are the shows I like, this is the music I like, things as such. Eventually we form an ego, but if you notice, we are attracted or magnetized to things typically because they ignite or elicit an emotional response out of us. 9 times out of 10, it's a positive emotional response out of it. That's why we enjoy it. And so if you're catching my drift, what I'm trying to tell you is that we build our ego based off what makes us feel good. So this makes me feel good. So let's say, for example, when teenage years are prime time for ego formation and ego discovery. And so if a teenager loves to sleep, they'll make it their entire personality. Oh my God, my bed. I love my bed. I love my bed. I do everything on my bed. My bed, my bed, my bed. I love to sleep. And so, but why are they making that their entire personality? It's because that's what internally makes them feel good. So for example, me growing up in middle school, my personality, I really enjoyed the world and the realm of modeling and models. And so Cara Delevingne was one of my favorite models. And so she was my personality, right? And I think I had a phone case of her. And the whole world of models, like Rosie and Candace and Miranda, where they were my focus, because when I watched them, it made me feel good inside. It made me feel inspired. These women inspire me. And so because I felt good, I was driven and motivated to focus on them, therefore building my personality, my ego, to surround them and to express, because I like models and their world, this is who I am. I am also similar to a model and their world, right? And again, I was a teenager, so I wasn't that refined and accurate, but what the message here is that we form our ego and our personality and our sense of human identity based off what makes us feel good. And throughout the course of our life and of experience and observation, we're going to realize what we like and what we don't like, what makes us feel good and what makes us not feel good. Again, how do we realize what we like? Because of how it makes us feel. How do we realize what we don't like? Because how it makes us feel, right? And so boys that are really into their masculinity don't play with dolls because they feel bored. They feel bored coming up with a story. They'd rather do something more active-based, like running around or throwing a ball or something, or more aggressive, like wrestling or something like that. But we are called to what makes us feel good. And so it's important to recognize that, to give the archetype of Cancer or water signs in general their due respect, their due honor, because often enough we'll belittle emotions and we'll degrade them and we'll act like they're barriers rather than helpful tools that inspire us and lift us up. We'll portray emotions as sensitivity and weakness and something that's wrong, especially for men. And it's important to recognize it's the complete contrary. Emotion is wonderful because it shows us what we're aligned to and what we're not aligned to. Without the emotional responses that... Excuse me, I'm going to move my chair. Okay. Okay. Without the emotional responses that we get from observation, we would never be able to realize what it is we like and what it is we don't like. Everything would be neutral. It would be colorless. Just gray. No contrast. No duality. See, that's the beautiful thing about Cancer. It highlights the importance of duality and how, whether we want to admit it or not deeply, we want it. We want contrast, because without contrast, there's no deep meaning. There's no black and white, there's just gray. And how can I relish so much in the white, in the light, without the darkness being there to contrast it? And that's a foundational concept in the teachings of enlightenment, of original enlightenment, that we must open our mind and become mature to learn to appreciate contrast in an unconditional, loving way. And this is not to celebrate negativity, absolutely not. It's more so not to gaslight ourselves when we're recognizing its importance and its role and the role it plays in highlighting the light as such a magnificent creation. And so, Cancer representing the feelings we feel when we're observing things to see how, if we like them or not. I think often we fail to realize just how much of a blessing it is to be able to be like, I like you or I don't like you, based off what I'm feeling internally. And I know it sounds basic, but now that we're reinforcing it, next time this happens to you, where you encounter something new, something or someone new, and they make you feel good, or they make you feel bad, you're going to become more aware of it, and you'll just appreciate it more. If it's good, you'll appreciate it more because you just discovered something that you appreciate. And if it's something bad, it makes you feel bad, you're going to learn to come to appreciate it, because you're going to realize, by witnessing this contrast that I don't really like, agree with, or approve of, I'm going to be able to make my inner security stronger. It's sort of the idea of, because I am watching you behave in that way, I am coming to love myself and appreciate myself more for the way I behave. So because of contrast, I'm coming to love myself more. Because I'm seeing the negative way you behave, I'm coming to learn to value and appreciate the positive way I behave. It's also a reminder for me to become aware and to be aware and to never slip back into negative perpetuation or negative action, because it's not looking too good. And I can honestly admit that, so I have to also hold myself accountable. Ari also talks about how typically with Cancer, the archetype of Cancer, when it's releasing its attachments, so for example here, Ari gives the example of a teddy bear or a blankie, right, with kids when they're growing up and they're releasing that attachment. It's hardly ever cold turkey. It's always going to be a gradual, slow, passive. I want you to think of the ocean again, Cancer. Water, the way water operates, it's not, it can travel fast and move fast, but no matter how fast it's going, it always appears gradual and flowing and peaceful in some sort of manner. Because that's just the way water is. Water, it's so liquefied, it's so moldable to its surrounding, it's so adaptable that no matter what way it's moving, it always appears to be in some sort of flow, even if it's chaotic moving. And so the Cancer archetype releases things slowly. The way the moon goes through its phases in a gradual manner reflects the way the Cancer archetype operates. Again, the moon is what represents Cancer, so they're directly tied. And the way the moon expresses itself into being is direct intelligence telling you how the Cancer archetype expresses itself. Okay? As well as the crab, because that's the animal that represents Cancer. And water, as well as water. And so slowly we'll have gradual expansion, gradual change, gradual evolvement throughout the course of time. Slowly, because it's much different if your mother were to say to you, you're going to give me that teddy bear and blankie and you're never going to see it again. You're 7 years old, you're too old. Or if the 7-year-old slowly on its own accord decides, you know what, I'm going to be 8 next year. Maybe I don't need my teddy bear everywhere I go. I don't need to eat breakfast with my teddy bear. And so that's the healthy way the Cancer archetype will release old attachments, the positive way, in a gradual, self-driven manner where the self makes this choice, right? A negative aspect of Cancer would definitely be somebody taking away your choice, taking away your safety, and doing it against your will. That would lead you to have to form new perspectives, new beliefs that will now replace your teddy and keep you safe, such as my mom's a bitch. But that's just the way that will go. But yes. Okay, this part is beautiful. I think I'm just going to read the paragraph from Ari. Okay. Through the Cancer archetype, a soul is learning how to create and identify fully with just the right attachments so that it can create a feeling of home for itself, wherever it happens to be. At the same time, however, duality, again, a common theme for Cancer, it is learning how to let go of whatever attachments are no longer necessary for its development. This means the ego is in constant redefinition. And that kind of aligns with the way the moon has cycles, with the way the ocean has tides, with the way the female body has a cycle, right? This constant refreshment, constant evolvement, this constant tide shift, the tides are always shifting, the constant crescents of the moon shifting and changing, is all reflecting the truth and intelligence of the Cancer archetype, which again, it's always moving and shifting internally because it's always on a goal and a drive and a mission to expand, but it must be in a manner that it feels safe for itself. And so, how do we feel safe in the first place? By having secure attachments. I feel safe wherever I am. We can have different safe attachments because we're all raised differently. Some people will be like, I have a bracelet, and with this bracelet, I feel like I'm protected by my higher God or whatever. Some people can be like, I have my inner mind, and I'm a yoga master, and I go within and I figure it out. Some people are like, if I have my car, I'm safe. No matter if I have my car, I'm good. Some people are like, no, as long as I live in my hometown, if I'm in my hometown, I'm good. As long as we create attachments to what, and there'll be big attachments or small attachments according to our own unique individual circumstances, right? And that's how now we feel safe. Now, at the same time as we're acquiring safety, we're going to want to expand, right? And so let's say you have a thing where you're like, I like to be in my hometown. Now, how are we going to grow if you're stuck in a hometown? Well, then you're going to want to do it in different avenues, in different aspects. You're going to want to be building your house and getting new cars every 2 years. And you're going to want to be improving or expanding in different ways that don't necessarily go against your safety measures. And so you're not going to move out of town because that would go against your safety measures, but you're going to get a bigger house, a bigger car. Now, let's say You're the kind of person who, I don't need anything external, I just need internal. One that's going to facilitate the process of expansion a lot greater, right? And it'll happen a lot faster because you really are not relying on anything external. You're only relying on your internal. And when you need to let go of anything, it'll just be internal ideas. It'll never have to be anything external, right? Because for example, if you develop an attachment to something external like a person, then that can become negative quickly because, well, people don't necessarily want to be depended on unless they ask for it. So if you have an attachment to someone and they're not necessarily reciprocating the desire to be, attached to, it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up in your face, obviously. And then you're going to realize you're going to have to come up with new perspectives, new beliefs to keep you safe all over again. Like what? I'm unlovable. No one will ever love me. And then you're not going to be in a relationship for a long time. But the whole point, and when you learn enlightenment, you'll come to realize that it was never, no one will ever love me. It's, I'm securing my attachment to something external, another person outside of me. So I'm relying always on something and someone else outside of me. And so when they leave, I'm going to be empty. And so the smart choice here, the way you would expand and grow in a positive manner, let's say you made the right choices afterwards, you would say, oh, okay, I'm going to go within. Build my inner self-concept, love myself, create a relationship with myself, my internal mental conversation, focus on me, go within, go within, go within. You'll fall in love with yourself. You'll come to realize, I love me. And then you're going to start attracting people who also love you and respect you and appreciate you for who you are. All starting because you love, respect, and appreciate yourself for who you are. When you understand yourself, you're going to start to notice that you're going to align to people who also are open to understanding you and actually do. But yeah. And so we're constantly, the Cancer archetype is constantly holding on to its attachments which make it feel safe. Which lead it to feel safe internally, safe emotionally. It's always going to be an emotional safety. So for example, let's say you grew up poor, and so now having money is something that makes you feel really good internally. It makes you feel really emotionally good. When you don't have money, you panic and you go into anxiety mode. When you have money, you feel really good. And so you're probably going to be like a little stingy with your money, right? But at the same time, you're going to be like, okay, well, I also have money, so I also want to buy nice things. So it's going to be like a duality, a contrast within you. I want to keep all my money, but I also want to show it off. Because showing it off adds to my internal emotional security, because I wake up and I get to see my big house alongside seeing my big bank account, right? It's always about having the secure attachments that make us feel emotionally secure, while equally learning how to let go of them to expand into more. If I can let go of my attachment to this other person, I can build a relationship with myself and expand in a greater manner. If I can let go of my attachment to living in my hometown, I can leave my hometown and discover new experiences. Whatever. If I can let go of my attachment to needing a big, expensive car, I can lower my car bill and expand in a different way. I can go take these lessons to go learn how to do this skill. Now I don't have that much of a big car, but I expanded in a way that now is making me feel better. Because back when I had a big car, but no social life, I started feeling depressed. So how am I going to alleviate my internal emotional state? By letting go of the need to have a big expensive car, having a little extra money, and then being able to expand in a safe way, take initiative to expand, and go work on creating a social life. So we're holding on to our secure attachments, which make us feel emotionally safe, while equally figuring out ways to safely expand and become greater versions of ourselves, which will ultimately lead to an even greater positive feelings within our internal energetic emotional state. Ari goes on to say how the truth, he says the challenging truth about the Cancer archetype is that there's nothing definable about the ego. The ego is always changing according to what currently constitutes a sense of security for the soul. And you can see that truth reflecting in the ocean. You know, the tides are always moving, but I guarantee you it's never going to be the same drop in the same spot twice. You know, there's no exact definition. There's no exact mold for the ego. It's absolutely infinite in every single shape, way, and form. And it's always changing, just like the ocean, just like the tides are always moving. And the drop of water that was in one spot is never going to be in that same spot again. It's going to go somewhere else and somewhere, you know, it's just always changing and always flowing and moving. And the ego, because let's say, you know, I live in my hometown my whole life and I get up and I move to Europe and I've lived there for 5 years. Do you think my ego is going to be the same? Absolutely not. Absolutely. My experience will shape my new definition of what safety is. Now that I'm here, safety is not the same as it was when I was over there. So I make new definitions, so I change. And this is ever presently happening. And you don't even have to move countries. You can literally be in the same house, but you discover a new movie and you watch a movie and it shifts your perspective. And so now you have new definitions of what makes you feel emotionally good and safe. And what makes you feel, you know, we change. Our ego is always changing, especially throughout the course of time and maturity and new perspective. Observation and new observation and new experience will always shift us in how we define ourselves and what we like and what we don't like, and our opinions, our perspectives. We're always changing. We're always subject to change. That's the one universal truth, that we're always subject to change. There is no absolute personality, you know? The ego, he says, the ego is always changing according to what currently constitutes a sense of security for the soul. And that will change because you'll learn new information, so your perspectives will change. You know, at first someone will tell you, don't swim after you eat. Don't do it. And you're a kid and you're like, holy shit, I better not do this or I'm literally gonna die. And then you turn 15 and you're like, I literally ate, I swam 2 minutes later and now I'm okay. Why? Because maturity gives you a greater sense of perspective. And so you're no longer so naive. And so you change. And so now you're not afraid to go into the pool after you just ate. Like when you were terrified as a kid. Why? Because as a kid, you weren't open to much awareness, knowledge. You know, you weren't open to much realism, logic. And so you had a specific definition of what safety was. Whatever my parents say is safety. Whatever my parents say is safety. And then you matured with age and time and you gained wisdom and perspective, and you said, no, I'm going to make a personal internal choice and I'm going to decide to listen to myself and say, I'm safe to go inside this pool after I eat. I'll be okay. And because now internally, emotionally, you feel at peace, you feel calm, you feel okay, that's your green light. That's the Cancer archetype's green light to go out, take the initiative and expand and be more. Why? Because the idea of going into the pool no longer elicits anxiety or bad emotions. It elicits safe emotions, good emotions, positive emotions. All right, continuing with Erimoshi's book. Now Erimoshi is going to describe a possible shadow expression of the Cancer archetype, which is to resist letting go of the familiar, which again can be a very heartbreaking awareness or observation when you realize you've been perpetuating negative energetic expressions for X amount of time, and you wake up and you say, what have I been doing this whole time? However, that's why it's called a shadow expression, so you can eventually come to the light and realize what's true. So a shadow expression of the Cancer archetype is to hold on to the known forms of security as a means of staying in this known familiar place. Stockholm Syndrome can be a dramatic example of this. You know, when you have a toxic relationship, but you're just so comfortable and used to the idea of the person playing a role in your life, so you stay. Or because you have children, you use that as an excuse to secure your safety, so you stay. You know, anything that goes against the unknown, things we will, excuses almost, we will grab onto to excuse ourselves from expanding. And so we will stay in negative experiences, negative circumstances, simply because, well, essentially, we're not aware of how powerful and infinitely free we are because we lack the knowledge of enlightenment. Once you acquire the knowledge of enlightenment and you practice the intelligence on your own self, you'll begin to realize there is nothing to fear when it comes to the outside world and everything to gain, right? When we realize that we create based off our own alignment, based off our own internal understanding of what reality is. I won't get too much into the subject of enlightenment. I do have my 1-point playlist on that for that. But yes, it's a shadow aspect of Cancer because there's many, and this is personal, and I've observed it as well, there's so much excusing and perpetuating and the continuation of perpetuation of negative energetic expressions throughout generations and families, and it's all because, well, we're just this way. This is just who we are. This is what we know. This is what we've been doing for years now. And so people stay, continue to pass down generational trauma throughout entire generations, and they excuse it with the idea that well, we've just been like this for so long, right? And so Cancer can form serious relationships or emotional attachments. Here Aries says to many things. You know, it can be to relationships, to food, to routine. I have a Cancer Venus, and for a long time growing up, I struggled with my relationship with food and with exercise and things like that. I have my Cancer Venus in the 6th house of, again, routine. And so food is something that, and I'll talk about this when I talk about the Taurus archetype, but food is something that can easily be confused with love and praise and pleasure. And so a Cancer can easily mistake food for proper self-love, proper self-care, proper self-appreciation, right? Instead of appreciating ourselves in the manner where we speak to ourselves kindly, give ourselves proper mental conversation, give ourselves imaginary scenes that make us feel good, you know, instead of taking care of our internal world, we'll go and buy a pizza and say, this is my reward. That's not really going to be a long-lasting or really a beneficial reward at all. What will be a more beneficial reward? You know, taking an hour and dedicating that hour to solely uplifting yourself and praising yourself, appreciating yourself, loving yourself, getting to know yourself, complimenting yourself, replaying affirmations, and having the focus on you rather than an external pizza or anything else. And so again, it can be routines, food, relationship, really anything that's already familiar to the soul. And so if it's familiar, it's going to give a sense of safety because it's known. And so if I do something forever, I'm for sure safe not to get hurt, right? And so if I sit in my desk all day for the rest of my life, I can guarantee I'm never going to get run over by a car. And so when we hold on to these attachments just to feel safe, well, we're limiting our expansion. And that's ultimately, in the long run, that's never going to benefit us, because the entire point of creation is the desire to expand and to be more and to experience greater. And so you're going to depress yourself, deplete yourself, wither yourself, and hurt yourself in the long term. It's important that when you recognize you have what feels like emotional attachments to things, like I don't want to let go of all the food that makes me feel good because it makes me feel so good. You have to ask yourself, is it the food that's making you feel good? And when you say, yeah, well, I eat food and it feels good, but then an hour later I start to feel bad. And that's when you become honest and you say, no, it's not the food that's making me feel better. What it is, it's the stimulation of my senses. When I eat, I can taste, and that stimulates my senses, and that makes me feel happy. Quickly that fades when my stomach is hurting 30 minutes later. So now you realize, oh, it's a stimulation. Now that I realize it's not necessarily the food that brings me pleasure, but the stimulation of my senses, then I can use that information and start to expand my awareness of what I'm capable of and not be so emotionally attached to the food. Because it's not the food that brings me happiness, it's the stimulation. Now, instead of being stimulated through the mouth by food, I might practice some new stimulation. Whenever I feel like I'm just gonna go grab food just because I'm not even hungry, I just wanna feel something, I might, well, basically, you can use any of your senses. Just go smell something, go hear some music, go touch some grass, go watch something, distract yourself or stimulate yourself in a new way that's going to allow you to recognize that it's not the food that's bringing you the pleasure, but the stimulation. Now, if once you're enlightened, you'll become aware that the most exciting stimulation is the internal senses. So when you can imagine yourself experience something and use your internal imaginary 5 senses to experience things, then you'll become even more infinite, and you can literally experience anything at any given moment, and you're never going to be tied down to only one specific avenue of stimulation or pleasure. This goes with people as well. When you realize it's not necessarily the person that's making me so happy, it's the way I feel when I'm around this person. And so that means it's you. Essentially, it's you making you happy, even if there's another person involved. But who's the one that's giving you these feelings of good pleasure? Even if it feels like they're bringing it out of you, you are the one providing yourself these good feelings of pleasure. And so it's important to recognize that, so you don't feel emotionally attached to somebody else. Because you realize, well, at the end of the day, I'm the one producing these own emotions. You inspire them out of me, but I'm the one producing them. Now, because you inspire them out of me, I can think of you, picture your face, picture us talking, having a mental conversation, and get stimulated all over again and feel pleasure all over again. But I don't need your physical body here in front of me like a codependent action in order to feel that stimulation and pleasure. I can simply experience you via my imagination, because now I understand you're simply my inspiration of my stimulation, not my creation of my stimulation, because I create, but you inspire, right? And this will be seen in many different expressions. You'll see someone take the same route to work every day for the rest of their life. And that's Cancer archetype expressing itself, because they feel safe. They know the route. I know what buildings I'm going to cross. I know what people I see. I know what cars are usually here. At this time, it's not really packed, or it is packed. I know the environment. And so, because I feel so safe and familiar knowing it, I'm going to come every day and succeed. It's like when you go to the gym and you're consistent and you're loyal to a gym. You don't go to a different gym every day. You know, the Cancer archetype builds a familiarity, a repetition. It becomes a second home. And so that's your Cancer archetype expressing itself when you say, I'm going to stay in the same elementary school for my entire elementary graduate timeline, you know? That's you choosing a home, and your Cancer archetype is expressing itself when you say, I'm going to go to this gym and I'm going to commit myself to this gym for 15 years. And so that's the only gym you go to the next 15 years because that's so familiar and safe and comfortable you feel with it. Then that's your Cancer archetype expressing itself. You know, when you say, I'm going to have an iPhone for the rest of my life because that's the only thing I feel comfortable, familiar, and that's the only thing I know, That's your Cancer archetype expressing itself. When you say, I'm going to have one best friend because she's my life and she knows me and I know her and we're meshed together into one soul, that's your Cancer archetype expressing itself. You know, what we always go back to, the home, our foundations. Usually when people say, like, let me describe you, who you really are, they're going to describe your Cancer archetypes because that's what they see you frequent the most and what they see you frequently express or visit or do or be. And Moshi goes on to explain the 2 ways that the unhealthy emotional patterns of Cancer archetype may manifest. The first example he gives are where we just remain stagnant in the same place for just the longest periods of time, perpetuating the same. We never expand, we never change, we never grow. Because of what? Fear of the unknown, fear of the unfamiliar. The second one would be becoming too overly protective. When one is not balanced in their security, meaning they're insecure, right? They lack the security within themselves, that sense of self, sense of strength within themselves, that they'll become so insecure that they feel they need to protect themselves from everything. And the best way to protect yourself is to hide yourself, to stay stagnant, again, to not move, to be in the corner, in the dark, quiet, unseen, unheard, just in the shadow in the background. There's no expansion out of fear. You see how the initial purpose or the initial intention is negative. It's fear. Out of fear, I'm making these choices. And that's why they are unhealthy shadow aspects of the Cancer archetype, because it is through negative perception and negative belief that we're making these choices. And in the long run, a choice made out of a negative perception, negative belief, is never going to benefit you. It's negative. The math can only add up. And so what can it only do? Be a detriment. It can be a negative for you. And so that's why he describes it as an unhealthy emotional pattern, to stay too stuck, too stagnant, to not reach outside of the confines of safety and explore. And even if something may go wrong or may make you feel like, oh, I didn't like it, there's more value in experience than stagnancy in the long term. And I guarantee you that, because you will learn through trial and error what it is you like and what it is you don't like. Again, the Cancer archetype will let us know according to how we feel, but the only way to know is to try. You know, the only way to know is to try. And I'm not saying you have to go and risk your life in any excessive degree. It's just about taking a step forward. And then you take a step and a couple weeks pass and you took 50 steps and you fall back, but then you fall back 2 steps and now you're in 48. But at least you're not at 0. You know, you're going forward and you fail and you learn, and there's nothing to be afraid of when it comes to failure, because at the end of the day, the Cancer archetype knows I'm never going to risk myself in such a degree where I won't be able to come back up and proceed forward. You know, the Cancer archetype has that balance where, yes, I'm going to expand, but I'm going to be intelligent and wise about it. I'm not going to be reckless like an Aries who will just go out there without thinking. I'm going to feel the environment out, my choices out. I'm going to listen to my intuition and then proceed with the intelligence my intuition is trying to transcribe to me. And if my intuition says it's a go, then I'm going to go. And if I fail, I'm going to learn and proceed and try again and grow in that way, you know? The Cancer archetype, and I think this is especially important for men, which we all have Cancer in our birth chart, and so this applies to everybody, women and men. There's great, here Ari Moshe uses this word and it's beautiful. He uses the word fragility. There's great fragility within the Cancer archetype because it's entirely a water emotional based sign. It's motivated by emotion and driven by emotion, and it's water. And when you hold water in your hands, it'll seep through your fingers. There's intense fragility to it. Intense. And if we perceive fragility and emotion to be something that's threatening to us or dangerous to us because of negative programming or past experiences that were negative, then we're going to reject it and deny our fragility and become cold and hard and harsh and bitter and the opposite of where we're meant to go. We're going to dry up and be barren rather than full of life and full of moisture and water, which is the goal. Emotion and water are synonymous in the astrological field. And so the point is to be full of water, because that is how earth, us, how we flourish through moisture and humidity rather than barrenness and absolute dryness, you know? And so we need to have a balance with emotions, not reject them, but not completely fall into them. There's a balance where I feel this way and I'm going to use the intelligence of how I feel to help me make my next choice, but I'm not going to take this feeling too personally. I'm going to observe through a third eye view, through a bird's eye view. I'm going to leave my body, observe how I'm feeling through an upper perspective, like if I was a bird flying over me, or, you know, I left my body and I'm watching myself from an upper third person perspective. I'm going to observe how I feel, not take it too personally, not dive too deep into it, but just enough so I can realize how I feel is trying to tell me. Based on how I feel, it's transcribing intelligence. You have certain internal perspectives, certain internal mental conversations, certain internal beliefs, certain internal repetitions, certain internal imaginary scenes that are leading you to feel bad. And so you need to identify what those are and shift. And you need to shift those perspectives into positive ones that benefit you. So for example, if you wake up every day and you have the perspective, I'm so afraid to go outside. And when you say that, it instills more fear in you. And so that sentence, that perspective, that belief, that adaptation, that identification, I'm afraid to go outside, makes you feel bad. It's making you feel bad. So what's the intelligence trying to tell you? Stop replaying that. Stop perpetuating that. Stop believing that. Stop thinking that. Think something else. Think something that's going to make me feel good. Like what? I'm safe within my body. I'm safe in me. I'm safe in my mental state. I'm safe where I am. Wherever I am, safety follows. So long as I'm safe internally, I'm safe externally. You know, the way that you telling yourself that you are unsafe makes you feel bad, it's your awareness trying to tell you, then feel good by telling yourself that you are safe. And so repeat that now, because we create based off our internal mental state. And so if we believe and perpetuate, because we've been perpetuating for years that I'm afraid to go outside, then that's all we're going to perpetuate and align to. And so when we go outside, all that's going to happen is life circumstances or life experiences that validate why we should continue to be afraid to go outside. So we're going to go outside and we're going to see a very scary looking man. We're going to go outside and see a kidnapped man. We're going to go outside and see a scary dog barking on the loose. Why? Because we create our alignment to our life experiences based off what we believe internally, based off what we perpetuate internally, the mental conversations we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves, the beliefs and perspectives we replay and tell ourselves. And then they will validate because we align to our life experiences based off our internal understanding of what is for us, of what is true for the outside world, and what's true how we fit into the outside world in this present now moment. And so that is what enlightenment teaches us, that we're not stuck to having to perpetuate negative beliefs and perspectives like I'm afraid to go outside because last week a man looked at me really, really scary, and now I'm afraid to go outside for the rest of my life. Now you understand, why did I experience the man looking at me so scary? Well, because I aligned myself to that reality based off my internal present mental state. And so if I can shift my internal present mental state, which is the understanding of what is true for me, for the outside world, and how I fit into the outside world, then I can align myself to a new experience, a new reality. And now when I go outside and I'm perpetuating the perspective and the repetition of the affirmation and the reminder of my present now truth is that I'm safe to go outside, and I'm safe outside. When I go outside, I'm only going to experience safety, and that's what's going to validate, and that's what I'm going to experience because that's what I'm aligned to, starting with my internal, ever-present now mental state. And we do this with affirmations that help us remind ourselves what is our present now truth. And this is enlightenment again. But again, if you want a deeper insight into this, check out my 1 Point playlist and my link tree, which is my Instagram bio at Inspiegato. Okay? So yes. All right. We are never stuck, and we are always open for greater expansion of the positive kind. There is nothing to fear when it comes to emotion. Emotion is intelligence, which is letting us know if we're going down the right path or the wrong path. The feel bad path, the wrong path, or the feel good path, the right path. According to the beliefs or the mental conversations or the perspectives we are constantly replaying and feeding life, feeding belief, feeding validity into, then we will experience a certain specific life experience because we align to it based off of that internal energetic understanding of what reality is. We are the creators, right? And so don't become cold or detached. Don't become such an extremist. Don't become extremely emotional to where you have no logic in you, but don't become so cutthroat to where you have no sense of compassion. Balance is key. And you can sense how you feel internally. We are always aware of how we feel. Always. You can sense, yes, I've been a cold, detached, bitter asshole for the past 15 years. You know, like there's no point in trying to gaslight yourself or lie to yourself, truly. So Erimoshi continues to speak on how the Cancer archetype is pretty much going to become a master at adapting to change in every present now moment. And the way that it's going to be able to do this successfully without having a crushing fear of the unknown would be through fulfilling its own emotional needs throughout the course of change and transformation or expansion, right? And so here he continues to say, for example, growing up we'll learn, oh, maybe I shouldn't, or maybe it's not a smart idea to tell everybody how I'm feeling or my problems, or, to let everybody see right through me. And so now you're fulfilling an emotional need by being like, okay, I can expand by trusting the right people, so I can trust, but not trusting everybody. Okay, and so we learned. And so how are you fulfilling an emotional need? Well, at first, your emotions were distraught because you came to realize that telling everybody how you feel not necessarily the best idea, because not everybody has your best interest at heart. And so not everybody's advice is going to be for your best interest. And so you learn that, and that betrayal kind of taught you, well, I want to continue to expand and to live my life, but I don't want to be afraid of trusting people forever. So how can I, learn something from this, but still be able to experience life in a way that I don't fall under this trap again, So what am I going to learn? I'm going to learn, well, look, I still want to be able to trust people, but I just can't trust everybody. And I have to be able to use my intuition to really help me rely on who I can trust and who I can't. And my internal, when I'm around specific people, my internal energetic state, my emotional state is going to let me know. I can trust you or I can't. And I just need to learn to trust and rely on that before I can go on and continue to trust people, right? So I won't fall under the same pattern of being betrayed because I was being naive and ignoring my intuition, right? And so the soul is to adapt to change on a moment-to-moment basis by supplying itself its own emotional needs. This is imperative because if we rely on someone else, we're going to be stagnant forever because we can't necessarily control someone else's actions more than we can control our own, right? So it's important that we learn, that the Cancer archetype learns to fulfill its own emotional needs and not rely on anyone else. Also here, another Cancer archetype is, or the way it expresses itself in an attempt to expand, is creating specific environments in their home where they feel like they're most in their home, whether it be in their own house or in their bedroom or wherever they feel the most at home. They really curate the environment to feel a specific way energetically and emotionally, so they feel free, safe, and open to explore expansive ideas that would go out of their comfort zone or out of the normal, right? And so, for example, the 4th house, I have my Mercury there and my Sun, and I really feel the most comfortable being myself and speaking my truth when I'm in a familiar, comfortable environment. That's why I have this podcast and I speak through my room, not in my kitchen or in the library or outside in my room, because I feel the most comfortable, safe here to open my mind. In that, this can easily be seen like when you go to a therapist office, their Cancer archetype is expressing itself in their attempt to create a pleasant environment that allows you to feel comfortable enough to open up. So they'll dim the lights and they'll have pleasant music playing in the background and pleasant temperature, and they'll have a calm voice that's understanding, and they'll build an environment, or they'll create an environment for you to feel safe, familiar, known, and receptive to opening up and to being honest and transparent about your true emotional nature, what it is and why it is that way, and etc., etc. So that is the Cancer archetype. When we purposefully try to set up a mood for an environment, that is the Cancer archetype expressing itself. This can be for many ways. Like, let's say you want to get motivated because you're going to play against a team, or you're in sports. So the Cancer archetype expresses itself in the way we're like, I'm going to play Party in the USA because that's such a familiar and nostalgic song tied to athletes and getting motivated. And so Party in the USA being tied to athletes being motivated is really a Cancer archetype expression in the mass collective scale. You know, the what we fall back on, the familiarity, the wedding songs, the graduation songs, how they all stay the same throughout the course of time. They're just classics, they're traditional. That is the Cancer archetype expressing itself. Traditional, the word traditional really speaks to the Cancer archetype because traditional means repetition throughout the course of time, throughout the longest course of time. And that is Cancer, what is familiar. Erimoshi says, at the core of the Cancer archetype is the way that each soul will emotionally integrate, take in its moment-to-moment experience of life. And so in every present now moment, we're observing, whether we're observing and reacting to our emotion, to our internal world, our mind, or whether we're observing and reacting to the external world, the third dimensional world. In every present now moment, we are observing, being aware, and reacting to something. And that is always going to lead us to feel a certain way. Now, even if we feel neutral throughout the whole day, that just means that we just mastered a state of neutrality. But a person who has Cancer, a lot of Cancer placements or dominant Cancer placements in their birth chart, will experience a range of emotions in the whole day. And it's just common and normal. Because in every present now new moment, there's a new internal reaction to the new observation. Even, that's just what it is. Even when you're just watching a show, you're sitting down, not much is happening, but the show is happening. And so you're watching a storyline, so that's going to bring emotion out of you. Really, the only time things stay really stagnant is, let's say you're meditating, but you're not even meditating with words or imaginary scenes, you're meditating with silence. And so that's kind of the best way to ensure yourself a neutral state of emotional consistency, right? But just repeating silence in the mind, which is a common form of meditation in a way to neutralize the nervous system or emotional system. But yes, the Cancer archetype, again, it's the way that each soul will emotionally integrate each present now moment. In each present now moment, I'm going to have a new emotional reaction. Ari goes on to say how we all will emotionally react to circumstances differently according to the stories we tell ourselves and how we feel safe in them. So if I'm in an abusive household and I choose to stay, I'm going to tell myself certain stories that excuse or validate why that's the right answer, even if it's not. But because that's just what makes me feel safe. And so awareness is the utmost importance here, because post-enlightenment, we are free. We are free to go beyond the negative limitations we are forcing and excusing down our own throats out of fear for our own safety and survival. And now we can pursue real safety and proper living experience far beyond the four walls you know of. Ari says, the Cancer archetype teaches us to take responsibility for our own emotional response, to recognize that the ways in which we participate with existence is highly dictated by our moment-to-moment emotional experience. If I see somebody getting hurt and my first emotional experience is fear, then I'm not going to help them. But if my emotional experience is protection and drive, then I'm going to run up to them and help them. According to our emotional, or if another option is if my internal emotional response is caution, but the drive to help and protect, I'll call the police. But there's different, the varying emotional responses we have will dictate the varying choices we make. Quite simply, quite plainly. And this is all can get so complicated because we're all raised in different circumstances to the detailed small t. And every small second, every moment, every detail in the makeup of who we are in this present now moment is going to come into play to determine why we react emotionally to specific things and why we choose to behave and act in specific manners according to our emotional responses, according to the observations we see, whether it be in our own internal mind or the external world. But we must take responsibility for how we feel and then do something about it. Use the intelligence for good. Emotions are not in vain. And post-enlightenment, you realize that. And so, no negative emotion is ever in vain again. Every negative emotion is intelligence for you to upgrade yourself, for you to ascend and grow past the limitations you've been previously forcing down your own throat and excusing into your life experience. When we become responsible over our own internal energetic state, then we want to make sure we're always handling it in the best possible way and degree. And so every time you have a negative internal response or reaction, say, what intelligence is this trying to teach me? Oftentimes, contrast will tell, for example, I'll see someone behave in a nasty manner, and internally, it'll make me feel first maybe upset, and then that anger will be alchemized to pride, and I'll be so proud of myself for who I am and the choices I make and the beliefs I decide to take in and identify with and the perspectives I take on. Contrast, sometimes when it's contrast, and that'll help us to re-solidify how much we appreciate ourselves and the work we do on ourselves. So don't be afraid of contrast. Just recognize that observing things will make us feel a certain way emotionally. And when we feel negative, there's intelligence being transcribed to us. So determine and decipher what that intelligence is. That intelligence is either going to tell you you're on the right path or you're on the wrong path. The right path can be seen as validation of you appreciating yourself more by witnessing a contrast. Or it can be you just feel good. You've just been feeling so good all the time. And so that's how you know you're on the right path. Every thought you tell yourself, every mental conversation you hold within yourself, every imaginary scene you have with yourself makes you feel great. Every action you take, every moment you just feel great. So that's how you know you're on the right path. But when you happen to feel negative, and it's not because you're witnessing contrast, it's because your self-concept is insufficient, or you feel insecure, or you don't feel like you're enough, or you don't feel like you're good enough, or something like lack. It's important for you to affirm the opposite immediately. So the minute I'm not good enough, I am good enough. I'm more than good enough, because we create our life experience based off our internal understanding of what is objectively. And so creation energy doesn't care if emotions are hurting you, because creation energetically doesn't realize that you're not aware that emotions are there for intelligence, for you to make upgrades and change your life. And eventually to feel good. Negative emotions are always meant to lead us back to realize, hey, I want to feel good again. How am I going to feel good again? By shifting my internal mental state, my beliefs, my mental conversations, my perspectives that I identify with, that I take on. Again, this is enlightenment information, so please don't rely only on this small segment. If you want to master the art of enlightenment, please go on my 1 Point playlist or go on my Instagram at Inspiegato and go to my link tree. I have typed out written papers that go into great depth, as well as my Instagram. I have so many written posts on my Tumblr, etc., etc. I have much information on enlightenment. But yes, ultimately, all astrological archetypes are going to lead us to the road of enlightenment. That's what everything is going to lead us down to. The human experience, every incarnation, every past life, every future life, whatever it may be, will always lead us to the one thing that we all just need to know now, which is what? That we all stem from a single point of light, and creation begins internally based on our internal mental state, and that's how we align to our life experience. All right, continuing. A quick little summary. He says this exactly. As the soul continues to connect to its own needs, it learns how to create just the right boundaries in its life. Eventually through trial and error, of course. Too much unfamiliarity at once is shocking for the soul. However, there's a constant imperative to challenge those boundaries and adjust to the continual process of ego development and, I'm sure, expansion. So, right, we do wish to always expand. We just want to go about it in a nice, safe manner, in an appropriate, time-paced manner. But the Cancer archetype is a cardinal sign. The initiative to challenge the boundaries of the comfort zone and safety are always there. And they're always going to be poking at you. And if you deny them, then you will become bitter and resentful, because, you'll blame the external world for your lack of expansion. And so that's important to become aware of. Of course, not to deny your true innate, really natural and innate desire to expand and be more and reach outside the confines, or challenge the confines of what you consider your comfort zone and your safe, familiar, safe haven. So, and Capricorn here, Erimoshi continues with contrasting the sister sign of Cancer, which is the polarity Capricorn. And Capricorn in the birth chart is the 10th house of work, status, and reputation. And so it's when you go to work. You leave your home to go to work. You got to get up off your bed to go make your bag. And Capricorn is the bag, the work, the dedication, the loyalty to the job, to the reputation. Versus Cancer, the 4th house, is the home where you wake up, where you go to sleep, where you practice your hobbies, your true desires come out. You have your real interest, your mask is off. Capricorn kind of forces you to put that mask on to secure a reputation so you can succeed in the career field. Right, and so they're sister signs or polarities because they're complete opposite and they contrast each other in the birth wheel directly. And so, and if you listen to what I'm saying about the subjects also contrast directly. We're talking about the home and the work life, right? Direct contrast here. And Capricorn, the contrast of Capricorn, Erimoshi points out here that it kind of teaches Cancer that it has to get out of bed to go make the bag, to go expand and to work. It can't just stay in its bed, in its room forever. Okay, and the Capricorn archetype, which again we all have simultaneously as we have the Cancer archetype, are both pushing towards opposing desires, and we have to manage a way to balance everything out and go about our life in a balanced manner. And so yes, we do have to get up and go to work. However, when we go to work and when we are getting ready for work and we come back from work, we're going to make sure we're equally honoring our Cancer archetype and ensuring that our emotional state is maintained and feeling good and at flow and at peace. You know, we don't want to focus too much on Capricorn archetype and then completely deny or ignore or avoid the emotional state. No, because then you become such a shark cutthroat individual that you lose all sense of compassion, all sense of emotional relatability or emotional relation. And then you're alone and bitter and angry and you become like a villain. You might have a lot of money, but you're just inherently unhappy, because at the end of the day, we're energetic beings, and the point of humanity and our deepest desire is to connect with the community. So if we don't balance our desire to succeed in the career field with also balancing a safe and open or present, available emotional awareness, then we're gonna go way too far on the spectrum, where they're gonna be no emotions, just be way too much of an asshole at work, and no one likes us, so we really don't really like ourselves because we avoid our emotions. It's all just denial and wrong. Or we're gonna go way too into the Cancer and become way too emotional, and we're way too soft, and no one can tell us anything because we cry about it and everything offends us, and we can never have our own backbone. We're just completely weak and fragile, and we need a balance of both. And that's what the contrast of Capricorn and Cancer is telling us, where yes, you absolutely need to honor your internal emotional state and ensure that you're always feeling at flow and at peace and relaxed and confident and good and positive feelings. And then use that amazing feeling inside to go work and to go do a great job at work and to go build your reputation, to go be kind to people, to have boundaries but have respect as well, and to have compassion but to also have discipline and no bullshit, but also have an open mind, open heart to understand that sometimes you just have a balance of emotional awareness and also your career awareness. Wow, I just got the chills reading this, and this is beautiful. Erimoshi said, and of course I agree, obviously I just said the ultimate goal for everything is enlightenment. So he says, ultimately, when a soul's self-image is unified with truth, then there is truly no place that does not feel like home, as unconditional love is found from within. That's absolutely beautiful. That really is the goal for all Cancer archetype, is to build the home within the internal mental state. And so no matter where you are in the external reality, you're always at home, because the real home is the internal world, the internal ever-present mental state, which is the understanding of what is for you, for the world, and how you fit into the outside world. But that is the goal. Now, to finish off with Erimoshi's book and to jump into some notes I have, I'm going to read the last concluding paragraph he has here on the Cancer archetype. The Cancer archetype on a chart represents the nature of the human identity, ego, or self-image of a soul, which serves as a vehicle for the self's or soul's evolution. It signifies the experience of a soul's incarnating as an individual human ego and the intimate relationship between the two. It dually represents a soul's capacity to care for itself and other beings, as well as the capacity for a soul to protect itself or stay at home based on its fears of truly facing its own emotional dynamics. Now, for the next topic on Cancer archetype, so I have been studying specifically the Cancer archetype, for about a month now. I've just been reading on it, living my life. And so clearly, since this realm since this subject of this energy subject of Cancer archetype has been in my mental state, it's been reflecting in my internal and external world. And so I've been gathering some of my own intel through, wisdom of knowledge that I've been throughout the course of time, and I want to read them to you. So that's what's coming up next. Alright, so I'm going to start off with some Tumblr posts that I have here. I'm talking about the Cancer archetype. The first one is, start relying on your intuition as your primary guide and caretaker. We create our alignment to our life experience or reality 110% based off our ever-present internal energetic state. How does the circumstance make you feel internally? Trust that intelligence and use it as guidance for your next move. When you realize everything and everyone is energy, you'll realize your intuition is your strongest tool towards success. What is emotion? It's energy in motion. If your focus is tunnel visioned into the subject of success, you will quite literally feel when there is an unaligned energy relating to failure or weakness or any negative energy steering you away from success in your environment or your internal mental state. Use that feeling of discovery and uncomfort to guide you into making the best choice for your next move to ensure you remain on the right path of success. Trust in your emotions. They are a compass and a guide that is intelligence being communicated to you by you. Use it. Let it guide you straight to success. So that's the first post. Now, the second post is here. The Cancer archetype shows us the beliefs we hold on to for some reason, and they may even be negative. Why? Because of familiarity. Mainly familiarity and repetition. Sometimes we just lack awareness of something new, so we repeat the same old, same old. That's the Cancer archetype definitely expressing itself. Alright. So, guys, there's a lot, by the way. This was never promised to be a short video. So continuing, another post I made reads, the Cancer archetype represents the rationalizations we tell ourselves to keep ourselves feeling protected, familiar, and safe in our everyday lives and environment. The stories we tell ourselves, the decisions we make, the rationalizations behind why we behave, act, or perpetuate certain internal and external actions to ultimately help us feel familiar, at home, safe, protected, in known territory, and in a familiar environment. It's the intelligence we tell ourselves to allow us to feel ourselves, our internal mental state, or our emotional state, in a familiar territory, in a manageable and controllable territory, in a familiar story, in a manageable and controllable story, in a comfortable story, in a story that feels properly relatable according to our previous life experiences or according to our levels of awareness, in a story that feels conquerable and survivable, in a story that feels safe, attainable, doable, practical, realistic, within reason, reasonable, at home, safe, protected, and emotionally stable. The fourth house of home, familiarity, family, where we sleep at night, where we wake up every morning, where we come home at night and wake up to in the morning. What you come home to at night and what you wake up to every morning. Where you store your memories and personal belongings, which most often than not carry emotional significance, meaning and value. The comfortable, the familiar, the safe, the known, the recognized, the manageable and controllable, the conquerable, the external manifestation of the inner home, the external home, the internal home. The Cancer archetype expresses itself in these kinds of ways. When I tell myself these mental conversations, these rationalizations, these perspectives, I feel safe, in a familiar space, capable of expressing myself and taking initiative and expanding. At home, protected, like I'm in control, like I know what I'm doing, grounded, in a relatable life experience I assume I should have, etc. That's the Cancer archetype, the story we come back to every night. The story we tell ourselves we are living before every night's sleep and after every morning's wake up. The stories we tell ourselves of who we are, why we behave the way we do, why we choose what we choose to do, to be, or to act, etc. Who the outside world is, why the outside world behaves the way it does, why the outside world chooses to do what it chooses to do, or be, or act. These stories and explanations and rationalizations we tell ourselves to allow our mind, emotional state, and overall mental state to feel safe in a familiar story, in a manageable and controllable story, in a comfortable story, in a story that feels properly relatable according to our previous life experiences or according to our levels of awareness, in a story that feels conquerable, survivable, in a story that feels safe, attainable, doable, practical, realistic, within reason, reasonable, at home, safe, protected, emotionally stable, etc. To conclude, the Cancer archetype challenges expansion within the realm of their emotional security and safety. The Cancer archetype asks itself, how can I expand in a way where I am still emotionally protected, secure, and safe? Am I safe to take initiative and expand here? Let me feel the energetic vibe of the room to find out. Let me speak to others and sense their emotional states. Let me take initiative to see if it is safe to take more initiative. I have a few more posts. We're going to continue. That was a bit of a long one. The next post reads, Cancer archetype is where you come back to every night, the story you come back to every night, the home, familiar, the nostalgic. The next post reads, ultimately the Cancer archetype is meant for expansion as the original light was. Expansion in a safe and protected manner. It ensures survival within our internal mental storytelling and our external actions. We make or perform actions based off our safe internal mental rationalizations. Doing this will keep me safe, and so I will continue to do it. Well, maybe I can do a little bit more, or do something different. Okay, yes. I feel comfortable enough to expand and be different or more. I'll go with confidence and initiative, and if I feel emotionally safe via my nervous system, that's my green light. How I intuitively feel will determine if I am safe to express myself in expansion, and if so, then I will do it confidently. According to whatever happens, I will learn a lesson. Regardless, Cancer is a cardinal sign. Initiative. The next post reads, Cancer archetype is what we relax into. The beliefs, the thoughts, the mental conversations, and the imaginary scenes, the ones we truly relax into out of safety, that they are our real, true, authentic, no bullshit story. The storytelling and storyline we choose to tell ourselves to keep our internal state feeling safe and grounded in a familiar reality. We make or perform actions based off our safe internal mental rationalizations. The next post reads, the Cancer archetype is the rationalizations we tell ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves, the internal action, and even the external action we take to ensure we feel safe in every current now moment of our life experience. Alright, so before we continue on to the mainstream book of Joanna WoolFolk, I have some more notes that I want to talk about, and then we'll continue on with the book and conclude this beautiful archetype. Alright, so Cancer already, the symbol is a 6 and a 9, and so it's already showing obvious and clear, transparent duality between the 6 and the 9, right? The 6 representing the material world and the 9 representing the spiritual world, and how we must balance both through, our emotional fulfillment, as well as the intertwining of expansion in the third dimensional external reality. And if we can balance and use them both intertwining in a flow, rhythmic manner, we'll be able to succeed, right? So Cancer is showing that, it's important to balance out the external world of success and external success with the internal world of emotional fulfillment and stability. So right away, the 69 is already showing that clear contrast, which is great. And so again, Cancer is one of the most dual signs, the sign that will show clear polarity, and you'll find it hard to pinpoint an accurate description of a Cancer, because they're everything. They're all over the place. They can be incredibly sweet, but they can be incredibly bitter. They can be incredibly lively and energetic. They can also be incredibly gloomy and depressing. They go from each polarity. They can be annoyed, and then they can be accepting. They can have compassion, or they can be resentful. They can really love and care for you, or they can literally be like, I hate you forever. I'm gonna hold a grudge for the rest of my life. There's always, they're just so emotionally driven. And so without the balance of logic and the perspective of rational action and rational thinking, then the Cancer, if they're too influenced with the energies of Cancer archetype, can become almost irrational in their choices based off their emotional state. So for example, let's say a Cancer feels betrayed, instead of eventually, maturing and becoming enlightened and realizing, I'm going to learn to forgive and expand that way. And I'm going to realize that I learned a lesson, and so I grew, and so I'm no longer bitter and mad or resentful over the betrayal. I'm going to grow past this. A Cancer archetype might just be like, no, I'm mad, and I'm going to stay mad for the rest of eternity. So I don't want to see your face, because I see it, and it's not until they're driven to such a point where they're like, why am I so mad? Why am I so mad? Right? Then they'll start, oh, maybe I need to expand and learn forgiveness, or learn self-empowerment, or get out of this victimhood, get out of this powerlessness. But Cancer, again, the Cancer archetype, since it is so emotionally driven, can lose sight of rationality and balance and stability, right? Because again, the ocean is always moving. The moon is always shifting its it's going to be a crescent moon or a full moon, or it's always shifting. The moon is always shifting, as well as the tides are always shifting. Water is always moving. It's never fully still, ever. And so Cancer is similar into where it's never still. Cancer is not going to be one mood the whole day. They're not reliable in that sense, like an earth sign would. At least the archetype is not, because of the simple fact water is never still. Earth, ground, dirt is still. And so a Taurus archetype will feel a specific way, and it'll just feel like that the majority of the day. But a Cancer will be going through all these emotions and all these changes simply because of the emotional reactions their observations are leading them to have, right? And so it's important to be open-minded and open-hearted with people who have heavy placements in the Cancer archetype, because you might be like, well, you're just so unstable, you're so irrational, you're so emotionally driven. It's not necessarily that. It's just they're always going to have and notice and feel the strongest their emotional reactions to whatever they're observing, whether it be an internal or an external situation or circumstance. And so just allow them to feel. And right, and so let's say a Cancer is like really annoying you because they're broody and they're gloomy and they're trying to emotionally manipulate you because you hurt their feelings, and you kind of want to show discipline to the Cancer archetype. The best thing is to establish stability and a boundary. So the complete opposite of what a Cancer would typically do is just spread all over the place like water and go wherever it can. It's important to balance out the Cancer with some kind of a Capricorn energy where it's like, no, you're emotional, I understand that, but I'm not going to feel bad for you because I believe I did the right thing, right? And so that's how you would kind of calm a Cancer archetype down, and you wouldn't let their moodiness get the best of you by establishing your own personal boundaries with the Cancer, while equally understanding that they are just emotional, driven, motivated beings. But there's no problem with balancing out their emotional nature with some hard truth, which is what? Yes, your emotions matter, but they're not the most important thing for everybody else. For yourself, maybe yes. So it's your own job to go and re-stabilize your own internal emotional state. But for the rest of the world, we're going to focus on our own emotional state. And so to be able to speak to a Cancer like that will be good for everybody involved, right? Essentially here the Cancer archetype is learning, I need to fulfill and secure my own emotional state. I can't rely on other people. I can't rely on external things. And that's a good thing. That's progress. That's ascension. So again, it's helping everybody involved, because now the Cancer will learn to build an emotional, stable, and secure emotional home within itself without needing anything outside of it, like another person or another object or something, to help it get there. It can just get there on its own. And so now when it feels like its feelings are hurt, it's not going to rely on the other person to apologize in order for the Cancer to get up and move on with their life. They're like, no, I'm not going to sit here and be resentful because you hurt my feelings for 7 years, because at the end of the day, that's not going to benefit me, and I'm here to benefit me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to distance myself from you, go within, build my inner self-concept, love on myself, and not pay too much focus and energy on you anymore, because clearly you're not feeding me positivity. And so I'm just going to distance myself from you. And so the Cancer learns to expand, to grow, to leave its familiar area, because it trusts itself enough, because now it builds its home internally. And so it only relies on itself. So now it feels safe to expand and go further into the unknown, no matter where it's going, because the home is found internally, as Eri Moshi said previously. Again, Cancer is a cardinal sign, and so it has no issue taking the primary action or the primary initiative to expand once emotionally stable, or once they feel emotionally safe to do so. Once the Cancer says, I feel emotionally okay with leaving behind negative energy and pursuing positive energy, then the Cancer archetype can feel safe to leave its comfortable confines that it's so familiar and known with, get up, walk out the door, go into the unknown, and pursue positivity without this overwhelming fear of, what's going to happen? What if I'm not safe? What if I'm not protected? What if something bad happens? What if negative? What if negative? What if negative? What if negative? They don't have to worry about that, because now they understand, no, I create internally. based off my internal mental understanding of what is my internal mental state, my internal emotional state. And so long as I can keep myself feeling safe internally, keep myself feeling safe emotionally with the specific mental conversations and specific imaginary scenes and specific affirmations that remind me how safe I am in my own body, my own consciousness, and my own personality, in my own internal world, then I have no problem with going out of my comfortable safe space that's so full of negative energy, leaving it and go pursuing something positive and expanding. Because the Cancer is a cardinal sign. It has no problem with having that initiative. The problem stems from not feeling safe enough to do so, not feeling comfortable enough, not feeling confident enough to do so. And so that, the way we remedy that is by building the self-concept, by going within, building the inner world, securing the inner world. Ultimately, as all other archetypes are going to teach you the same thing, the ultimate lesson and goal here is to reach enlightenment, the intelligence of enlightenment. And the thing about every archetype is just showing you a different avenue of reaching the same final outcome, mastering the intelligence and the practice of enlightenment. Every archetype comes to that: Pisces, Scorpio, Cancer. It all goes to going within and building the inner self-concept. And you're going to go to sea with earth, with fire, with air. It's going to repeat. Every single archetype is going to take you to the same ending: enlightenment. Point blank, period. That's really it. And so here with the Cancer archetype, we're just figuring out what avenue it takes. With Scorpio archetype, we figured out what avenue it takes. With Pisces, we figured out what specific avenue it takes. Because every archetype has specific characteristics and traits that align to it and only it. And so Cancer is driven by emotion, while Capricorn is driven by status and reputation. And so they are all reaching the same goal in different manners. All right, again, so this Cancer archetype is these stories we tell ourselves to help us feel safe, feel like we can manage, we can control, we're aware, we are comfortable, we're familiar. You know, we tell ourselves stories and explanations and rationalizations for our actions, for our behaviors, for our choices, and they're all just aiming to communicate the intelligence to our own self that we're safe, we're protected, we're familiar, we're comfortable, we're capable, we're in a space we can manage, in a space we can actually operate in and survive in. And this is going to vary according to how much we believe we're each individually capable of. Some person might say, I'm not really capable of shit, so I'm only going to stay at this one job for the rest of my life because I'm so scared of ever losing it because I don't feel like I'm capable of anything else. And so they're only going to stay in that confine. That's the story they tell themselves to keep themselves feeling safe, and so they don't feel like shit when they have to go to the same job for 40 years. They're like, no, I don't feel like shit because of what it is. It's safety and security. Whereas another person will say, my emotional fulfillment comes from changing, from evolving, from growing. And so the stories we tell ourselves are going to be, I need to switch jobs every 6 months to feel good. And so that's the story we tell ourselves. And so because changing jobs every 6 months is going to make us feel safe emotionally and fulfilled emotionally, that's what we're going to tell ourselves. Oh, I just have to because that's just who I am, you know. And so we do. But the stories we tell ourselves for us to feel in control and familiar, given any circumstances and awarenesses, is what we're going to see through the Cancer archetype in each one of our individual birth charts. And so the crab here is the animal that represents Cancer. And so again, the crab, just think about the animal, it's a very soft, delicate, fragile, being, and then its exterior is a very hard rock shell with snappers that snap at the, at any random, it almost feels random, but it's not. It's just at any sense of threat, right? But the Cancer may sense a little thing as threat. Like, let's say the Cancer has intense eating disorder issues that no one knows about, and you say like, oh my God, you look slim, thick, trying to compliment the Cancer archetype, but they have intense issues. You might have just really offended it. And so it'll snap at you and you're like, what the fuck? Man, I'm trying to compliment you. I just said you look slim, thick, baddie. What the heck? And then the Cancer snaps back at you with some attitude like fuck off. Like, don't comment on how I look. And you're like, what the hell? But because every person is different. And so that's why it almost seems random, because we don't know exactly where we're going to hit a soft spot with the Cancer archetype, because everything is emotional. And so we don't really know a lot of the times what people's triggers are. How are we going to know? And so that's kind of imitating also how Cancer operates in relation to how it's symbolized by the crab. But yeah, and again, the crab, the shell, it's a safe, protective, familiar home. And it's not frequent that the crab changes shell. It's not like every day. It gets to a point where it's like, oh, I'm outgrowing it, and now I have to shift because I'm outgrowing it, like in that one SpongeBob episode where Mr. Krabs has to change his shell and he's like all vulnerable like that. But that protective exterior shell represents how Cancer may put up a lot of a front, right, in order to really own up to how emotionally vulnerable and fragile and motivated / driven they really are. And so let's say you're very masculine and you don't want people to know you're very emotional. You might come off as like completely cold and detached and cold-hearted. But that's not the case really at all. What it is, that's your exterior protective shell keeping you safe from any external force that might want to harm you, belittle you, make fun of you because of how intense your emotions truly are and how much you really do rely on them to make choices, to drive you, to motivate you, etc., etc. And so, yeah, the protective shell at the end of the day is not the crab. It's like, it is a part of the crab, but the real crab is the vulnerable, fragile. And it's not to say that Cancer is completely weak and is spineless. No, on the complete contrary. I want you to think of the ocean, right? You think of a drop of water and it's harmless. And then you think of the ocean, right? And it's the strongest force you could possibly reckon against, right? And that's similar to Cancer, where you want to underestimate emotion. You want to underestimate the power and value and importance of emotion. And say it's unnecessary and it's just a distraction and gets in the way. You want to do that so bad, but it's almost impossible to ignore how influential, powerful, strong, and important it really is. It's valuable, it really is. And so, yes, don't underestimate Cancer, not in the slightest. There's so much power when it comes to emotion. Just think of water. Water and emotion are synonymous. So just think of how much strength and power water has, and how much it can easily be underestimated and quickly be proven wrong when underestimated, right? All right, so the Cancer archetype is very intuitive. Again, it's driven and makes choices based off its emotions. So it's very good at gathering a sense of knowing through feeling, right? And so I'm going to talk to you, and the way I feel after I talk to you is going to determine if I can trust you or not. Because I read on not only your emotional cues, but on your small body language as well. I read on how you look at me and if you can keep eye contact, because every self-expression, even the micro expressions, the smirks, the eye contact, the eyebrow movements, are always going to be communicating some sort of energetic expression. And what is that? It's going to be your emotional state within that's going to be expressed outwardly, whether you want to admit it or not, right? And so a Cancer can pick up on those small intuitive things because they literally feel the reflection of the action being expressed. And so if you're talking to them and you keep diverting eye contact, the Cancer can already feel a lack of intimacy. And so that feeling is going to feel like a disconnection. Like, I can't really trust you. I don't feel a really open line of reciprocity in energetic exchange. And so again, the Cancer will make decisions based off intuition. So the Cancer is a great businessman because a Cancer can pick up on the cues and the energetic expression of even a poker face, because it's not your face that's giving you away. It's the energy you're expressing through it. And that's not necessarily going to be something that's tangible or that you can see. Sometimes it's simply something you can feel. And so it's hard when a Cancer is in tune, when the Cancer archetype is in tune with its intuition, it's very difficult to fool a Cancer, and so it's almost like the Cancer will allow you to lie in their face and then go on and make smart business choices somewhere else. So yes, a Cancer is good for business because it's good at picking up intuitive, energetic intelligence, right? Because if someone is going into a meeting and they have the intention to fuck you over, but to lie to you so you don't realize you're being fucked over, and then you take the deal, and then the whole time they were making it seem like, oh, this is a good deal, but they're really deep down, they went in with the plan to fuck you over. The Cancer will pick up on that, because when you walk into a room with an intention which is negative, the Cancer will be able to feel it. And it's not like you're necessarily going in with a smirk and some evil eyebrows and some evil music playing behind you. No, you can literally walk in looking like an angel. But it's undeniable the energy your intention holds, because intention is energy. Everything is energy, and the Cancer can read that. It's like a stench that's coming out through your pores, because we are always expressing ourselves energetically at all points in time. There's always a give and take in every present now moment when it comes to energetic exchange. And emotion and intention are primary, very, very strong and influential forms of energetic expression. So you walk into the room with the intention to fuck a Cancer over, they can already sense it. You know? Yeah. The Cancer archetype can also be described as a wolf dressed in sheep's clothing. There you go. A wolf dressed in sheep's clothing, because we especially when we contrast it with Capricorn archetype, we tend to think the Cancer is soft and excessively feminine and spineless and weak and fragile and vulnerable. And it's the complete opposite, you know. It can be, definitely. But Cancer is also a quiet asset, an intuitive asset that, again, can pick up on subtleties that a Capricorn won't be able to. And so a Capricorn will show up with demanding respect with their demeanor, you know, with their chin held high and their cheekbones popping out and them standing up 6'3", but they won't necessarily be able to catch when someone's trying to emotionally manipulate them, because they're so focused on the facts. Whereas a Cancer comes in to balance that out by saying, yes, I know those are the facts, but I'm sensing something that's not being seen. I'm sensing something that's not being told. There's an energy here that doesn't feel right. And the Capricorn will say, well, prove it to me. Give me tangible evidence of that energy that doesn't feel right. I need to prove it to me, and then I can believe you. But the Cancer will be able to identify it. You know, the Capricorn will say, no, I need some proof. All right. This is also why the Cancer archetype is good with handling money, business, things like that, because money is a very direct influence to feeling safe, right? Feeling safe and secure and in control, and like you're managing things well and that you're thriving, right? And so they kind of go hand in hand for a lot of people, a lot of perspectives. And so the Cancer is really good at, you know, is this a good deal or is not a good deal? And not necessarily because of the numbers, but because of the energy the idea is feeding the Cancer. It's all going to be intuitive choices made based off what they feel. And it sounds crazy, but it works. And it sounds crazy until it works. And that's the contrast between the Capricorn archetype and the Cancer archetype, where the Capricorn archetype will work so hard externally and build results that they're undeniable. And so you can see, you know, they're so freaking strong that you can see the muscle on their body, and then you can also see how they're successful because they have a nice car and like you can just see everything, right? But the Cancer, the power is more, it's an internal, subtle, intangible. It's intangible. I guess that's the best word I can contrast the Capricorn archetype with the Cancer archetype. the Cancer is intangible, whereas the Capricorn is tangible. And if you know anything about anything, that we all stem from a single point of energy, the intangible is often the more powerful. The intangible is often the more influential. The intangible is often the more valuable, the more useful. And so, what good is it to have all this external success if the internal emotional state is shit, right? And so sorry, I kind of went on a tangent, but that's why Cancer is so good also with dealing with finances, because there's, I guess, really only heavy Cancer placements can attest to this, but there's a feeling when you have a good deal, and there's a feeling when you have a bad deal. And if you go, and every single time, it's pretty much always accurate. The good feeling, good results, bad feeling, bad results. And why is this always obvious? Because we create based off, or we align to creation, we align to our life experience, to our life circumstances based off our internal energetic mental state. And so if I feel bad about a decision that's being offered to me, and I go through with it feeling bad about it, inevitably, mathematically, energetically, the only way that can manifest is negatively, because I'm making a choice knowing that it makes me feel bad, and so it's going to manifest with negative external results, quite literally, quite obviously, quite simply. And so this is why the Cancer is such a hidden, secret, amazing tool, because they may appear soft, but then they are the strongest asset. And that is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it will be underestimated. And anything that is underestimated will always have a shot at, almost like a Trojan horse, or like a poker face. What's that word? Like they can finesse. They can finesse because people think they're naive, and then they're not. So don't underestimate the Cancer archetype because you associate it with something that's like weak or spineless. Literally, on the contrary, emotion is energy, and energy is the basis of all creation, the motivation of all creation, the drive of all creation. So there really is nothing more useful than the tool that emotion can give you, especially in regards when you're making choices to optimize your own success. The Cancer archetype represents the actions we take and justify for our own safety, our own feelings of survival, protection, and self-preservation, our own feelings of safety. So let's say a mom is like a heavy on Cancer archetype, right? Or placement, and she's like in a home, but she realized, I don't love my husband, and I love my kids, but I think I love me more. And she decides to get up and one day in the middle of the night, leave her house, leave her kids and her husband, and move across the country or to another country and completely live a new life and never speak of it again and never address her old family again. Let's say a woman does that. She will literally take those actions and they'll be justified in her own right because she says, this is for my own survival, my own safety. And that is the Cancer archetype expressing itself. Now, you could say that's wrong, that's right. That's not the point here. The point here is to show you the example. There will be actions we take to justify for our own safety. Now, let's say you are a father and you're going to go camping and you want to make sure that everything's okay and safe. And so you overly pack. You take like a lot of toilet paper and a lot of first aid kits and a lot of you overly pack. And then you get there and you only need 1/4 of what you use. And then you finish your trip and you go back with the rest of the 3/4. That action, that choice is your Cancer archetype expressing itself. To feel safe and in control, and that you're keeping your family safe and you feel like your survival is good, your protection is good, your self-preservation is good. What action are you going to take? I'm going to overly pack, and I'm going to justify that action with the excuse, I need this to feel safe. And so you're going to do it, right? And so it can go in good ways and bad ways, in every way. But the point is, there's actions we take, and or they can be internal actions or external actions that we take, and we justify them for our own safety. And that's the Cancer archetype expressing itself. Because really, some people may act irrationally at times. Like again, like the mom, like the example where she just gets up and leave and never addresses her old family again, because emotion can really drive us to act that irrationally if we're not balancing out with logic, and then we will act out on that and justify those actions because we really do just want to feel good within. Sometimes no matter what it takes, and we'll justify it. And that's just the Cancer archetype expressing itself. But this is also for great things. Like, for example, let's say I'm heavy on Cancer archetype or placements and I'm superstitious. And so every time, let's say I'm a basketball player, but every time before my game, in order for me to feel emotionally safe, I need to sing 3 specific songs. If I don't sing those 3 specific songs, I don't feel emotionally safe. And so it is the Cancer archetype pushing you to follow through on your superstitions so you can feel emotionally safe and perform good at the game. You know, again, it's the actions we take which we will justify in order to feel emotionally safe, in control, good, like we know what's up, we're in control, we feel good, familiar, right? Again, so Cancer can often be confused, or Cancer can often confuse pleasures of food with emotional fulfillment. And so the Cancer can be known to emotionally eat, to eat a lot and things like that. Oh, you're sad, you're happy, you're excited, you're mad, whatever it is, eat. And so it is important to, this is a bit like on a tangent, but it's important to understand that food is not emotional fulfillment. Food is food. Emotional fulfillment is emotional fulfillment. And so if you want to feel happy, feel happy. If you want to eat, eat. But eating is not feeling happy. Feeling happy may be a result from eating, but eating is a separate subject on its own, and feeling happy is a whole separate subject on its own. So please understand that. Have that clear contrast, just so you know that. This will help the Cancer. Sometimes I just want to feel good, but they're so used to just, I want to feel good, I'm gonna go eat a cookie. I feel good, I'm gonna go have some sugar. I feel good, I'm gonna go have a brownie. You know, we don't necessarily have to go to the quickest outlet to feel good. You know, we can do some breath work, think about something, go for a walk. Just understand that we don't have to associate food automatically with emotional fulfillment or emotional pleasure. I think I speak on this because I struggled a lot with eating disorders growing up, and I have my Venus in Cancer in the 6th house of eating and things like that. So, well, I have a lot of experience with mishandling food because I've confused it with emotional fulfillment or love. And so, again, I'm not going to go too much in this, but I just wanted to say that. All right, so now we're going to hop into the only astrology book you'll ever need by Joanna Martine WoolFolk. Over 700,000 copies sold. It is a great book. Thank you, Miss Joanna. All right, so right here, Cancer. From June 21st to July 22nd. Quick little words to give a description to Cancer. Shell, protector, safe space, home, familiarity, family, foundation, and stability. Or sense of roots and stability. All right, so it is a feminine sign. Ooh, nothing to fear, everything to be excited about. Water sign, a cardinal sign. Again. And so here, Joanna describes Cancer as receptive, sensitive, imaginative, sympathetic, kind, and emotional. They possess an active and sharp powers of judgment within their intuitive mind, which I agree with as well. Although they may be sensitive, it's not necessarily in the fragile, weak-minded kind of sensitivity, like the insecure kind of sensitivity. It's more like they're sensitive to picking up on emotional cues, and so it'll be the smallest energetic shift, they'll feel it, and that intelligence will be able to let them know what's actually going on in whatever circumstance they're in. By sensitive, that's what she means, that they're highly aware of the emotional state they're feeling in reaction to the observation they're taking in. Awesome. The ruling planet here is the moon. We're gonna steal the moon. Is the moon, right? And sorry, that was ridiculous. I won't do that again. And she says here, the moon, which waxes and wanes and exerts a powerful magnetic influence in the same way that the moon governs emotions and intuitive behavior, right? The moon, you know, everything that you can associate it with is ties to Cancer. Even the idea of like complete darkness, and the moon is what is the light. It's what's shining, you know. It's beautiful. Again, the symbol or the animal that represents that represents Cancer is the crab. Carla, don't get sloppy now. So the crab, right? It has a strong exterior cover and a soft flesh underneath. And typically when feeling unsafe or in danger, the crab will resort backwards into its shell, into its home, and either crawls back to the sea or digs a hole and goes underground. The point is here, at the first threat of unsafety, it will either snap or retreat back into its home, into where it feels safe. Again, the glyph here is the 6-9, and it also represents here, again, this is also knowledge, the body part that is governed by Cancer is the breast area. And breastfeeding actually ties directly to Cancer because it's such a foundational root, almost familiar in a nature kind of way. It's so, what's that word? Primal, you know, foundational. It's such a root, the act of breastfeeding. And so even that kind of goes in with the Cancer archetype. And so again here, she says that the moon represents Cancer's desire to store memories and possessions. And the circles tied to the moons. So you know how it's 6-9, there's 2 circles and there's lines coming out of both of them to make the 6-9. She says that the circles tied to the moons represent force and energy expressed through emotions and imagination. The dominant keyword is I feel. The Cancer feels in reaction or response to whatever it is they're observing. Through that feeling, they will be able to make choices and decisions that secure their expansion while equally securing their safety. Or, yes, okay. The polarity, again, here we said is Capricorn, the sister opposing sign. Joanna says Cancer is the sign of home and life, home and family life. Cancers seek close personal relationships and are happiest surrounded by the familiar and by those they truly authentically love. Whereas Capricorn, the opposing sign, is the sign of reputation and public standing. So Capricorn natives, she says here, are typically concerned with the image they project, the reputation they hold, and they're driven and motivated by the ideas and subjects of power and fulfillment in the external, third-dimensional, physical world. That's Capricorn and Earth sign, which we'll touch on soon later. So the part of the body ruled by Cancer is the breast, as we spoke, and the stomach. So here, if you're heavy on Cancer placements and you struggle with digestion, it's direct, right? It's directly, blatantly clear intelligence that you're emotionally unstable. The way your gut, your stomach digests will be a direct reflection or mirror of your internal emotional state. So if you seem to suffer with digestive issues, your emotional state is out of whack. So that is a very clear, obvious tell-all sign. All right. All right, so here we're going to kind of speak about the mainstream ego, sun sign personality of the Cancer archetype. That is what Joanna is going to be describing for us, right? Whereas with Erimoshi, we kind of describe the evolutionary process. Now we're going to describe characteristics and personality traits, which may apply to the average sun sign if you have your sun sign in Cancer, or if you're heavy in other Cancer placements, you're going to find you relate to this as well. So again, the Cancer is very dual in its nature, in its polarity, where they may appear, Joanna says, kind, gentle, sympathetic, and patient. But then when you ask them, hey, can you take time out of your day and give me advice to solve my issues? And let's say the Cancer takes offense to that. Usually they appear like they're so loving and sweet and kind, and then out of nowhere they'll snap at you. I don't have time for that. I have to do my own things. Why do you want me to take care of your life? And so there's always like a dual nature, but at the same time, the Cancer is always open and communicating this this reciprocative intelligence, where they want their friends to tell them their problems, and they want to help their friends. They want to help the people they love. And so that's why they're so dual and kind of unpredictable in that nature, where it's kind of, well, a little hard to understand, because the Cancer approaches you with the attitude or the energy of, oh, I'm the sweetest, tell me your problems, I'm gonna help you solve them, let me carry your emotional baggage, I'll do it for you. But then when you actually want to put that burden on them, they're gonna realize this is a burden, and they're gonna snap at you, and you're gonna be like, what the hell, like I thought you offered me this open space. And then the Cancer is gonna be like, well, I am an open space, but I'm not like your therapist, like I'm a good friend, but I'm not your mother. And so I think the Cancer just needs to understand, well, if you want to have boundaries, present yourself with boundaries. Don't present yourself with the attitude, oh, like I'm free, I'm the therapist friend, I'm the mother friend. And then when people want to use or label you as that and use you in that manner, you get offended, you get mad, you get resentful. And so just be clear, and that's how you'll be able to avoid this kind of uncertainty or confusion within your own behavior and your own internal reactions. And then so here Joanna continues by comparing how a Cancer might be feeling negative, right? And so they'll be blue, and so they'll be singing sad music and making their sadness everybody else's environment and everybody else's problem, because basically a Cancer is just always going to be expressing itself and how it feels internally. And so whether you want to or not, when a Cancer is sad, you're all going to know it and feel it, and it's going to kill or at least lessen the vibe of the room at least a little bit, like it's not going to go without being noticed. It's going to be noticed. And so they might do this, and then like the next day they're full of confidence and they're so energetic and lively, and you're like, but I thought you were so sad. And they're like, yeah, but no, I'm not. Because the way that the moon is in shifting and the tides shift and the water flows and it's coming back and it's forth, that's the way Cancer is. And they might dwell on it for a couple hours, but then the tides shift, right? The moon is not going to stay in a certain position for long, maybe 2-3 days, before it shifts into its next phase. And it's very similar to Cancer. And so here she goes on to describe Cancer as a series of contradictions that, they love security but value excitement and adventure. So there's always going to be the ever-present contrast and duality, which is necessary for expansion overall. And the whole point of Cancer is to expand out of their home, out of their familiar roots, out of their familiar foundations, to challenge the external world and see if they like it, and they can make that now their new familiar, their new, they just expand. And so they're always contradicting in every single way, And so, again, she goes on to describe how they'll be very cautious, they'll be very safe, they'll tell their friends, like, okay, you need to eat, you need to be careful, you need to follow the rules, don't get hurt. But then when it comes to them, they'll forget to eat, and they'll act recklessly, like they're just a contradiction of behaviors and emotions and actions all into one. And it's not to excuse like hypocritical behavior, because again, hypocritical behavior is something negative. It's just something that the Cancer archetype has to understand they're innately dealing with, so they don't go down the hypocritical path. Through the awareness that you're constantly gonna be challenging and facing duality and contrasts, then you can be like, okay, let me not be crazy and let me be aware of how I act and how I'm feeling, so I don't act and look and sound like an irrational, crazy ass, emotional Cancer ass bitch. Through awareness, we can improve our character, make better choices, how to express ourselves and how to proceed in life clearly. So she goes on to say how Cancer will typically, have a hard exterior and a fragile interior, and they don't necessarily like to admit just how much they value confirmation or affirmation that they are loved and approved of. They don't necessarily want to be so outright obvious about it, and so they'll put up a front, right? But deep down, the Cancer will only be satisfied or fulfilled if their emotions are. And what is the best way to satisfy a Cancer, a heavy dominant Cancer, or a Cancer archetype emotions? Well, obviously it's to make it feel safe, to make it feel comfortable, valuable, accepted, like a home. It wants to feel loved, it wants to feel approved of, but it doesn't necessarily want to go out and demand it. It wants it for its own emotional fulfillment, obviously. After we learn about enlightenment, because if the Cancer doesn't practice proper enlightenment, which I'm about to speak of, what might happen is, for example, like let's say you're a man and deep down you really, really want someone to appreciate you and value you and want you and love you and accept you unconditionally and choose you as their home and choose you as their, forever, their foundation, their roots. But you never reach that, or what, because you never even expressed you wanted that, or you never like embodied that you wanted that. Then you're gonna go your whole life with not getting that, not experiencing that. So you're gonna grow what? Very bitter, very hateful, very resentful. Love isn't real. Everybody sucks. You're gonna grow very angry, very dark, very hidden. And so this will eventually start to express itself. You're not gonna like women. You're gonna blame women. You're gonna say women suck. They're so rude and mean. You're gonna start to just corrode or ruin any relationship outside of you, because you're just expressing what's inside of you, which is what? Anger, hurt, disappointment, pain. Post enlightenment, when you learn about enlightenment, you learn you feed your own essence, you feed your own emotional necessities, right? You feed yourself through mental conversation and imaginary scene. And so if what you really want is to be loved, accepted, chosen, adored, approved of, you want to be somebody's home, you want to be somebody's forever, somebody's choice, somebody's first choice, you start to communicate that you are all that and have all that in the present now throughout your mental conversations and imaginary scenes. And so you build that energetic potency within you, whereas in the past you were just building the resentful one. Now you're building one of hope and approval and satisfaction and fulfillment. And so you align to a reality where that's your experience, and you experience that, and you end up falling in love, having a great family, a big family. You become a great home, a great safe space. You're loved, you're outwardly approved of and loved, and you're praised and all these beautiful things. Again, this is post-enlightenment. And if you don't know about the intelligence or knowledge of enlightenment, go to my YouTube channel, which is this, obviously, in my 1-point playlist. I have all those videos there. If you go to my Instagram at Inspiegato, which is in my YouTube bio, you have a lot of posts there as well. And I have a link tree in my Instagram bio, which has a lot of typed out written essays or papers on the basis of enlightenment. So I have plenty of information out there for you, so don't worry about that. All you have to do now is just go read it, learn it, and put it into practice. Yeah. All right, she continues to say how when Cancer is happy and they feel emotionally fulfilled within, they're just amazing people. They're very loyal friends who are very open to help and to offer you a sense of security and safety in a safe space. So that they're very good at letting you into their home and making you feel at home and making you feel like family even if you're not, and cooking you a meal and asking if you're okay and nurturing your emotional state and just who you are, your overall state, your energetic state. You know, they offer undying loyalty, she says here, which is very true, because Cancer, again, is the sign of holding on to the familiar and the roots. And so the deeper we build a relationship with someone, just the deeper it gets, the deeper the true is rooted and planted, and that'll just grow infinitely for as long as it possibly ever could. And so the loyalty, the devotion, the adoration, the love just continues to grow and build emotionally within the Cancer archetype. And so at first they loved you like a puddle, and now they love you like the whole ocean, because you've spent X amount of time with them and build up all this memory, all this experience, all this, all this time together. And that is Cancer. And so again, she goes, when the Cancer archetype really cares for someone, there's nothing that anybody can say that will make a difference to how much they care about that person. And so, like I said, undying loyalty through experience, through bonding over the course of time. A Capricorn is yours. A Cancer archetype is homie for life, ride or die, because they say that's my blood, that's my family, that's my home. And so they treat you as they would treat themselves, that kind of undying loyalty and love. And so she says that they have a real blind spot when it comes to seeing a failing in those they love, because of how, again, protective and defensive they are over the people they love, because they just want to make sure that the people they love are always emotionally happy and fulfilled. And so when someone says, well, actually, they're doing something wrong and their attitude or their behavior is kind of questionable, the Cancer snaps, hey, that's my friend. Don't talk about my friend like that. Well, like, dude, I get that's your friend, but your friend has like shitty behavior. Like, we have to address it anyway. And the Cancer is like, no, that's my friend. So like, you better shut up. They lose their sense of being rational because they're so devoted. And so that's why it can become blinding, and so again, nobody's perfect, but the Cancer does need to make sure they don't get lost in their emotional world, because reality and being rational and logical is still a very important part of life. And we do have like Virgo and Capricorn and Taurus earth signs in all our birth charts at the same time while we have Cancer. And so a balance of all kinds is imperative to succeed in any aspect of our life. Just know that. But if you are heavy on Cancer placements or archetypes, just know you are fully susceptible to this in a natural and innate manner. So don't be afraid. Just learn how to work with yourself. So you aren't blind to love, because at the end of the day, being blind to love is nothing to be happy about. It's something to be weary about. You don't want to be blind to love. Absolutely not. And so it's important that you do see the people you love for who they are, and then you can add the love on top of that. But you don't enmesh it, without holding them accountable or responsible for being good versions of themselves. We want people to improve, not to stay negative out of stagnancy or out of comfortableness. We prefer expansion, even if it is uncomfortable, if it's going to mean positive expansion. And so again, the Cancer, if, for example, let's say they were in childhood, their close friend betrayed them, they'll take that memory and then assess it with every new person they meet. Every new person that wants to become their friend, they're going to filter, oh, but here we go, might just get fucked over again. And so because they hold on to their beliefs, right, their perspectives, their memories, their experiences, the Cancer archetype holds on to that and then uses it, and if you're not enlightened and you have negative experiences that are making you behave in negative ways, then that's detrimental. So for example, here, she says here, Joanna says, staying enclosed emotionally and physically will keep a Cancer fearful. And so Cancer's fears are based off the fact that they have a difficult time trusting. They have a difficult time trusting others in the universe and just trust, because before being enlightened, you're not aware that betrayal is meant for you to secure your own inner security, and then you can align to a timeline or life experience where you only experience loyalty. But contrast is meant to ultimately lead you to a positive outcome. That's what enlightenment teaches us. When you are not enlightened, you'll get betrayed and then you're going to hold on to that memory of experience and filter it with every person you meet. And so now everyone might betray you. Now the world might always betray you. The world betrays, the world betrays, the world betrays. You can't trust, you can't trust. And now because you're perpetuating that, you're going to stay on that energetic, you're going to align to that energetic timeline over the course of time, years, and you're only going to be experiencing the validity that you're going to get betrayed and you can't trust the world. Why? Not because necessarily that's the only avenue of experience you can have, not at all, but because that's the only internal story you're repeating to yourself. And so that's the only energetic alignment you can align to, or energetic creation you can align to. And so that can literally, by energetic and mathematical law, be the only experience you can then have. It's like you're almost enclosing yourself into a negative avenue by holding and forcing and continuing to repeat the belief or the perspective that you can't trust anybody over the course of years. And so again, it can be very heartbreaking. I think any personality without the knowledge of enlightenment is heartbreaking to a degree anyway. But we don't want to lose out on experience of life because we're just so afraid of negative experience happening again. Because now, if we ever do get betrayed, enlightenment, again, one more time, teaches us that betrayal is meant to wake us up into the awareness, oh, I don't like betrayal. I like loyalty. How am I going to secure loyalty in my relationships? Well, I'm going to secure loyalty and the subject of loyalty and the focus of loyalty within my internal mental state, in my mental conversations, in my imaginary scenes. So instead of waking up and saying, you can't trust the world, I'm going to get betrayed, I'm going to say, look, I can trust myself. And I'm my own best friend. And I'm going to start there. And I know I can trust myself because when I say I'm going to do something, I pull through and I do it. I know I can trust myself because I'm always giving myself encouraging, motivating, uplifting, self-loving, internal opinions about myself and mental conversations about myself. I know that I can trust myself because I'm always having imaginary scenes that make me feel good. I know I can trust myself because every time I feel bad, I go inside my internal mental state and I tell myself mental conversations or have imaginary scenes that will lead me go back to feeling good. And so I can trust myself because I always am taking myself back to feeling good and I'm not relying on anything external outside of me. Just me, just me, just me. I love me. I'm my own best friend and I build my self-concept and I love myself and I'm my own best friend and I can trust me. And then that's how you build trust. And then you're going to align to a reality because you're so much in the internal energetic embodiment of authentic trust and authentic self-love. You're going to manifest like a friend or a partner or something or a mentor that equally mirrors and reflects that same loyalty, trust, value, unconditional love, respect, honor that you have for yourself. It's going to reflect another person and they're going to come into your life and you're going to have this great friendship or whatever. Alright, so for the rest of Joanna's beautiful book, I have pretty much spoken on most of those characteristics. Again, I have read this before I spoke about it, so I definitely got some of my information from her and then I said it in my own words. So I'm gonna skim through the rest of Joanna's book, but we're not really skipping out on any information. Know that if she has taught me anything, I've already said it, and I just don't want to be repeating myself more than I probably already have. It is over already 3 hours, so all right, so let's speed run through this. All right, so she goes on to say that Cancer is very great with, or she says here, sorry, your greatest impact is in human relationships. You have an instinct for making others feel cared for and understood. And I think Cancer recognizes if they're so emotionally aware, they just assume everyone else is also emotionally aware, even if they're not. And so they tend to treat people the way they treat themselves, right? If you are unhappy, then you're gonna go on and treat people in a negative manner. But if you're happy, you're gonna go on and treat people in a beautiful manner. And Cancer just represents that. Cancer is just a very obvious representation of the expressions we take based off our internal energetic state. You know, we'll make decisions based off of that, actions, and so that is what Cancer represents. You know, the expressions we take based off how we feel internally. So feel good, act good. Feel bad, act bad. That's kind of a clear, obvious fact. And so again, she goes on to say that Cancer tends to be a worrier and a silent brooder, and so they are cautious with who they trust, they'll come to learn this when they trust the wrong person. You know, betrayal does make them retreat back into their shell. And so at the first time that they're ever betrayed or something triggers them, they're going to learn very quickly not to tell everybody everything. And so they're not really going to, as they grow up, they're not really the kind of people to just lay everything out there. They rather hear all your problems, and then maybe they'll go on and start to open up slowly. But that is kind of like a Cancer-like thing. You know, their negative experiences what will determine their future actions, which is obvious, I think. And again, she says that if offended, they do not strike back directly. Their method of retaliation is to sulk. And she compares the technique is somewhat like being whipped to death by a dozen strands of boiled spaghetti. And so the Cancer won't necessarily, like, an Aries will go up to your face. Fuck you, bitch. Might even fucking slap you. A Cancer won't. A Cancer will walk around and a Cancer will have your brother or your sister find out that you're sad and then tell them why, and now your mom is gonna come up, why are you making her sad? Why are you making him sad? You know, they make it just like the energy, the environment. And so that's why she compares it to being whipped to death by a dozen strands of boiled spaghetti, because it's not really direct and confrontational. It's more like slowly drowning you in this sad black goo until and that's the Cancers, that's their best efforts of emotionally manipulating you into behaving the way they like. Now, if you actually did do something wrong, it's important to apologize to the Cancer and own up to your behavior. But if basically you just did something in your own accord and the Cancer is just being snotty and they don't like it, so they're going to make it everyone's problem, leave the environment, because, or just escape the Cancer's energy, because they're just going to slowly drag you down. Whether, as much as you want to fight it, it's just going to be there. It's like having an annoying mosquito there. So know that. And so again, she describes how sometimes Cancers who are not happy can become crusty, gruff, and grumpy. However, they are deep down soft beings who have just been hurt over the course of time. And Cancer, if you have heavy Cancer placements, emotions are so important and valuable, and they have so much meaning that being hurt will just affect you deeper. It'll affect you stronger. And so it doesn't, you know, and the more you're hurt, the more you grow this exterior shell, this facade that you're just like a rock, the strongest person ever, because you don't want to get hurt again, feel that same way again. Memory will kind of lead us to be programmed and act a specific way. And if we're not enlightened, we'll fall under this negative pattern and loop it for literally 50 years. And so Cancers are very sensitive emotionally, and so they take what they consider betrayal or hurt very seriously. So yeah. It says here that Cancer is very possessive. Again, it is the home where we keep our belongings, our intimate belongings, what we care about the most, our home. So, you know, we all have that box of memory, nostalgic. That's so Cancer archetype coded. Cancer. Okay, she says here, Cancer is a cosmic collector. If you know, they just love to collect memories. Oh, I'm gonna take this from you because it's gonna remind me of you for the rest of my life. I'm never gonna throw away the love letter my first boyfriend from second grade gave me. You know, I'm never gonna throw away the strands of my baby's hair, my baby's teeth. I'm never gonna throw away my baby's teeth. It's just the collection of photos, of memories, of everything, collection of anything. They like to collect and store memories, kind of like the moon does, storing memories, right? And yeah. Cancer revolves a lot around nostalgia, because nostalgia is hand in hand with familiarity and family and roots, you know, and foundation. And so very nostalgic people who like to look at photos, listen to old songs, go back down memory lane, watch old videos of when they were growing up. You know, they like the memory lane because for them that is what carries meaning. And so it carries a lot of emotional depth. And so it feels good to them, for them to be around that kind of energy. And so the Cancer is like the yearbook friend, right? You want to go to the Cancer's house to see all the yearbooks. She says here that Cancer is very devoted, again, to their family. The more they're devoted into a relationship, just like the more they mesh themselves and their skills into to being able to provide for whoever they love so much. She says here that it's hard to deceive the Cancer because they can spot the tiniest nuances in behavior. Again, they're very sensitive to any shift in energetic expression. And so it's hard to fool them because they'll catch on to it. Even if you have a great poker face, it's not necessarily the external, physical, tangible body that's communicating you how your intention or how you feel internally. It's your internal energy. And so that's coming out of you, out of your pores, and you could have a poker face, but the energy is still coming out of you. And so the Cancer can sense it. And so the tiniest nuances will also give it away. Your eyebrow twitched, or, you're looking away or something. The smallest things will make suspicious to your intention, to your behavior, to their safety, to the possibility of you being a threat to their safety. Oh, here, that's funny. She says, observe a crab on a moving beach. She says, observe a crab moving on a beach, and you will notice its strange sideways movement towards a goal. You know how crabs don't walk like forward, they walk on the side, to the side? She says here, people born under the sign of Cancer or the Cancer archetype never take a direct approach. And so this kind of goes with what we were talking about. So in compare and contrast to an Aries, when an Aries is confrontational, they'll go to your face, right? And they'll confront you right to the face. But a Cancer won't. They won't confront you to their face. They'll have your mother confront you, or your sister, or the environment will just be so fucking annoying that you go and confront the Cancer yourself. But the Cancer is going to pitter-patter and teeter-tatter around the subject of actual approach or confrontation. So Joanna does say here that Cancer people hold on to money as tenaciously as they do everything else that belongs to them. Because again, money is a quick... Sorry, my chair moving. Money is a quick signifier of safety to many people in their perspective and their mental state. And so she says here, to you, money spells security. Yet no matter how much wealth you acquire or accumulate, you never really feel secure, right? Similar in the way a Cancer will never fully, there's never going to be enough love to give and to experience and to have and to feel. And that's fair because positive energy is infinite in its nature, so there's nothing wrong with this. But Cancer, it's like, you ever wonder how there's billionaires and you're like, and how are you still so fucking hungry for more? How are you never satisfied? This is the Cancer archetype expressing itself. They really believe there's not enough security, there's not enough money in the world to ensure them absolute security, and so that's why they are hoarders of that's the Cancer archetype expressing itself. Again, I believe that to be in a negative way, a negative manner, but it is a Cancer thing because of how much they value security and their own emotional security. So the thought of, because this is what a Cancer thinks, okay, I'm gonna become rich so that I can sustain myself and my family. Oh fuck, my kids are gonna have kids. Oh fuck, my kids are gonna have kids. Oh my fucking god, so they're thinking about generations 15 years down the line, and so there's never gonna be enough money that they can make because it can always run out. What about 40 generations down the line? What about 50 generations down the line? So nothing is ever enough. If you never feel, if you're not enlightened and you can never really fully secure yourself, a sense of security within, you're always going to be on the chase for more. And that's how it'll manifest or express itself in the need to acquire wealth. And then you might even be fucking people over, but you will rationalize, or what's that word? You will justify the actions you take, again, to feel emotionally secure and satisfied. And so you'll be like a billionaire, and you'll see someone who needs money, and you're like, sorry, no, I got a job to do for my family. And it's like, brother, what's going on here? Oh my god, something's wrong. And she also says, a Cancer never gets enough love and approval. They always need more. And so that kind of goes in with the idea of security and safety. If we're not enlightened and we don't understand or know how to secure our own selves emotionally, we're always going to want it from other people, from other sources, whether it be money, a big house, a big car, respect, or lovers, or love, or admiration. We're always going to be seeking external validation, external fulfillment. And we're going to always be realizing that we want more and more. And it's never going to be enough because the external is never going to fulfill you as much as the internal state will. So if you want to be fulfilled, go within, fulfill yourself internally, and never have to worry about hoarding on or never having enough love, money in your life to feel emotionally secure and sufficient and fulfilled. Because holy shit, I can't imagine that kind of pressure. Like, I have to make more money because my family is going to be 50 generations down the line, And then there's people who are actively alive in front of you, and you don't want to give them any of your money because you're so afraid for the other 50 generations down the line of your family. And so there's contortion here. There's not. You're like, something's wrong here because something's off. Obviously, what is off is there's no knowledge or intelligence of enlightenment within these perspectives, within these decision makings, within these choices. Because the enlightened person knows, I'm free. Like, I don't have to worry about never having enough if I always have enough internally. Because if I always have enough internally and I'm always satisfied, fulfilled internally, then the external reality has no choice but to energetically align me to a timeline or a life experience or a life storyline where I'm always have enough, I'm always secure, I'm always safe. Even for the 50 generations down my line, I just have to make sure I teach them about enlightenment, not necessarily hoard billions of dollars. We all create we all align to the experience of creation or the experience of life circumstances, life storylines, life timelines based off our internal, ever-present internal mental state. So you feel secure within, you feel safe and fulfilled within, you will align to a reality that equally fulfills, satisfies, keeps you safe, secures you. But if you're constantly feeling like you need more and more and more and more, then externally you're also never going to have enough, and you're always going to be feeling like you need more and more and more. You're never going to be enough. You're always going to feel insufficient, leading you to always, at the end of the day, feel insufficient, insecure, like you're not doing enough, like you need to do more, like you're not strong enough, you're not worthy enough. It's just negative route. And to conclude, I'm just going to finish off with a little quick explanation, a summary of the Cancer archetype by Joanna. So she says here, that you typically tend to imagine the worst case scenario. That typically is out of negative programming of past pain and hurts to ensure your own safety. And that they're very emotional people who are constantly feeling and who are constantly aware that they're feeling. And so hearing a song on the radio will make them feel sentimental. A particular scent or a flower or a picture will she says here, jar their memory, and they'll go into nostalgic mode. So yeah, Cancer is a very beautiful, dual, expressive sign who really shows just the real authentic nature of humanity and how we behave and what we do when we have emotion within us, specific emotion, and how we can secure self-expansion in a safe manner. I have said so much. I have nothing left to say.